At my daughter Sarah's sweet 16 party, my sister Amanda grabbed the microphone and shouted, "This party should be mine." Sarah just smiled and said, "Then you'll love the surprise." But when the DJ made an announcement, Amanda started screaming. I never thought Sarah's sweet 16 would turn into such a mess. But looking back, I should have expected it. Amanda has always been selfish. She makes everything about her: birthdays, weddings, even funerals. If someone else is getting attention, she finds a way to steal it. It's exhausting, but for years, I made excuses for her. That's just Amanda, I'd say. She doesn't mean any harm. But this time, she went too far. Sarah had been looking forward to her sweet 16 for years. She worked hard, getting straight A's while doing extracurricular activities. I wanted to give her an unforgettable night, so I saved up for a beautiful venue in New York City, a rooftop ballroom with an amazing view. It wasn't a fancy millionaire party, but it was elegant and exactly what Sarah wanted. Everything was perfect: the decorations, the food, the music. Sarah looked stunning in her blue satin dress, laughing and dancing with her friends. I stood to the side, feeling proud, when suddenly Amanda appeared with a microphone. I didn't even see her grab it. One moment, the DJ was playing Sarah's favorite song, and the next, Amanda's voice boomed through the speakers. "This party," she slurred, she had been drinking, "shall be mine." The room went quiet. Sarah stopped dancing and stared at her aunt. Amanda swayed in her heels, her face full of anger. 16 years ago, she yelled, I was supposed to have a party like this, but did I get one? No. Instead, she pointed at me, she got pregnant and ruined everything. Everyone gasped. Cancel it. I want the money for a trip instead. I heard my dad say, Amanda, we'd already pay for your dress, the caterer, the DJ. But Amanda snapped back, then unpay them. I don't want a lame party. I want to go away, and if you don't give me the money, I'll make everyone's life miserable. The video cut off, and the room erupted. Some people gasped, others whispered. My mom covered her mouth, and my dad sighed, rubbing his temples, just like he had in the video. Amanda stood there frozen. Then she lunged for the microphone again. That was edited. That's not. But no one listened because my mom, for the first time ever, stood up and shouted, Amanda, enough. Amanda went silent. Mom walked over, her face red with anger. You demanded we cancel your party. You screamed at us for weeks until we gave in. And now, 16 years later, you're blaming your sister for something you did. Amanda shook her head. No, I deserved a party. I was just a kid. You were spoiled, Mom said, and you still are. The room was silent. Amanda looked around, expecting someone to take her side, but no one did. Her friends avoided eye contact. My husband shook his head. The DJ raised an eyebrow, waiting for instructions. Then Sarah, in her sweetest voice, said, Wow, Aunt Amanda, I really thought you'd love the surprise. Amanda's face turned bright red. With a loud scream, she grabbed a glass of champagne and threw it across the room. It shattered on the floor. That's when everything went crazy. The second the glass broke, chaos broke out. Guests gasped, some backed away, while others just stood there shocked. The waitstaff froze, unsure what to do. Amanda was shaking with anger, her face red, her fists clenched. For a moment, I thought she might throw something else, like a plate or a decoration. But before she could, my mom grabbed her wrist. Enough, Mom said through gritted teeth. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. Amanda pulled her arm away. Oh, I'm embarrassing the family? What about her? She pointed at Sarah. She just humiliated me in front of everyone. Sarah stayed calm. You humiliated yourself, Amanda screamed, then turned to me. And you, she yelled, pointing at me. You planned this, didn't you? You let your brat set me up. I took a deep breath, staying calm. Amanda, no one set you up. You did this to yourself. All Sarah did was remind you of something you said 16 years ago. It was 16 years ago, she shouted. I was a kid. And yet here you are, still acting like one, my dad said sharply. Amanda looked shocked. Dad rarely raised his voice, but when he did, everyone listened. You're 32 years old, he said, shaking his head. You're standing in the middle of a 16-year-old's birthday party, throwing a fit because you're not the center of attention. Do you even hear yourself? Amanda opened her mouth to argue, but then she saw how everyone was looking at her. No one was on her side, not her parents, not her friends, not the guests. Even people who didn't know the whole story could see she was acting crazy. She panicked and turned to her husband, Matt, pleading with her eyes. But he just looked tired, like he'd been dealing with her behavior for years. Matt, she whispered, say something. Matt sighed. I'm done. Amanda froze. What? I'm done, he repeated. With this. With you. The room was silent. Amanda laughed nervously. Matt, baby, you're just mad. I'm not mad, he said. I'm embarrassed. His words hit her hard. You ruined your niece's party, he continued. You stood in front of everyone and threw a fit over something that happened 16 years ago. And when it didn't go your way, you tried to break things. He shook his head. I can't do this anymore. Amanda's hands shook. You don't mean that. Matt just stared at her, then turned and walked out. Amanda cried, Wait, Matt. But he didn't stop. She ran after him but slipped on the spilled champagne and fell hard. Everyone gasped as she hit the floor. For a moment, no one moved. Then Amanda wailed, not from pain, but from embarrassment. She sat on the floor, her dress soaked, her hair a mess, her makeup smeared. She looked pathetic. And the worst part, Matt didn't even look back. He walked out and left her there. Amanda sobbed, but no one helped her, not her parents, not her friends, not even me. For the first time, she realized she had truly lost. Sarah came over and took my hand. Best birthday ever, she whispered. I laughed, but this wasn't over. The next day, Amanda did something none of us expected. I woke up the next morning, sure Amanda would call or text, crying about how we had all turned against her. But instead, I was ready for the fallout, but not for what Amanda actually did. By noon, my phone was blowing up, not from Amanda, but from everyone else. My cousin, my aunt, even my coworkers. People who weren't even at the party were messaging me, Did you see what Amanda posted? Check Facebook right now. She's lost her mind. My stomach sank. I opened Facebook, and there it was, a long dramatic post from Amanda. She tagged everyone. Me, my parents, even Sarah. As I read it, my blood went cold. She had twisted the story completely, making us the bad guys. She said I had always been jealous of her, and that I got pregnant on purpose to steal attention from her sweet 16. She claimed our parents forced her to cancel her party for me and that she was traumatized by it. She even said Sarah had planned the party to humiliate her, and our parents allowed it. She called me spiteful, Sarah cruel, and our parents weak. Then she ended the post with, This is why I'm cutting these toxic people out of my life. If you support them, unfriend me now. She made herself look like the victim, and the worst part, people believed her. Her friends, people who weren't even there, left comments like, I can't believe your own family did this to you, and you deserve better. I gripped my phone so hard my fingers hurt. I wanted to scream. How could she twist the truth so easily? Sarah walked in, rubbing her eyes. Why is my phone blowing up? I showed her the post. She read it, then laughed. You're laughing? I asked, surprised. Sarah grinned. Oh, Mom, let her dig her own grave. What do you mean? I asked. Scroll down to the comments, Sarah said. Look past her friends who are blindly supporting her. I did, and that's when I saw it. People who were actually at the party were calling her out. Amanda, that's not what happened. I was there. You embarrassed yourself, no one else. Wow, so you're just going to ignore the fact that you threw a glass across the room. Even my mom commented, Amanda, you wanted to cancel your party. No one forced you. We have video proof. Stop lying. Amanda tried to defend herself, but she was losing it. Instead of explaining, she just attacked everyone who called her out. Oh, so now I'm the liar? You're all brainwashed. Good riddance. Then came the final blow. Sarah showed me a video someone had posted from the party. It showed everything. Amanda grabbing the mic, her drunken rant, her demanding a trip to Paris, the glass shattering, Matt walking away. The truth was all there, and it was spreading fast. Sarah smirked. So, Mom, how do you think Amanda's going to spin this one? I shook my head. She can't. But Amanda didn't give up. She doubled down. She texted our parents horrible messages, blaming them for everything. She left me angry voicemails, accusing me of setting her up and turning Sarah against her. Then she showed up at my house. She pounded on the door, screaming for me to give her the full video of the party. When I refused, she threatened me. I laughed and said, Amanda, you've been trying to make my life hell for years. And look where that's gotten you. Sarah appeared beside me, holding up her phone. Just so you know, I'm live streaming this, in case Aunt Amanda wants to rewrite history again. Amanda's eyes went wide, and she stormed off. She's not done, I said. Sarah grinned. Neither are we. The revenge. At first I thought ignoring Amanda was the best move, but Sarah had a better idea. Aunt Amanda hates being embarrassed, right? She said. More than anything. I nodded. Then let's make sure she never forgets this, Sarah said, smiling. We made sure the truth stayed front and center. Sarah's friend posted the full party video everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit. And because the internet loves drama, it went viral. Millions of views. People started calling Amanda out everywhere. Old classmates messaged her, reminding her how spoiled she used to be. Even her friends started distancing themselves. The worst part for Amanda, her job found the video. As a real estate agent, her image was everything. They fired her for unprofessional behavior. Her husband, Matt, left her too. He had enough of her selfishness, and the public embarrassment was his breaking point. He took everything, the house, the car, their life together. Amanda was left with nothing. The final goodbye. Months went by with no contact. Then one day, I got a letter from Amanda. It was pages of her blaming me for ruining her life and turning everyone against her. And at the end, in big angry letters, she wrote, I hope you're happy. I stared at the words for a moment. Then I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I truly was.
My angrily parents call me, their voices sharp with disgust. Your children are idiots. They embarrass us. If they can't behave like your sister's kids, don't come back. That was the final insult. I cut off all financial support. Days later, they sent me a legal notice, $65,000 for raising me. I laughed. And with one phone call, I shattered their world forever. I never imagined I would reach a point in my life where I had to choose between my parents and my children. But here I was, standing in my kitchen, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. My mother's voice echoed in my head, light and casual, as if she hadn't just delivered a devastating blow. Rachel, sweetheart, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. For a brief moment, I had allowed myself to feel warm, hopeful even. Despite the years of tension, despite the favoritism, despite always feeling like the outsider in my own family, there was still a part of me that longed for our old traditions. I had pictured the way their house would be filled with the smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon, the comforting sound of family laughter. My kids, Ethan and Lily, adored their grandparents, even if the love wasn't always returned in equal measure. Of course, Mom. What's the plan? I had asked, already thinking about the excitement on Ethan's face when I told him. Then came the pause. That pause. Just long enough to make my stomach twist with unease. Well, this year we're keeping it small. More intimate. I frowned. Oh, so no kids at all? Another hesitation. No, not exactly. I should have known. I should have seen it coming. Rachel, you know we love Ethan and Lily, we really do. But they're, energetic. We just feel like it would be better if you and David came alone this year. It's not personal, just one peaceful evening. I had felt like the floor had been ripped out from beneath me. Just my kids. My voice had come out small, uncertain, as if I hadn't already guessed the answer. Mom sighed as though she was the one being inconvenienced. Jessica and Mark are coming with their kids, of course. You know how well-behaved they are. And there it was. The truth laid bare. My children weren't enough for them. My parents had always favored Jessica, my older sister, their perfect firstborn. She could do no wrong in their eyes. Growing up, I had spent years trying to live up to the impossible standards she had set, but nothing I did was ever enough. Jessica got the praise, the attention, the unwavering support, while I was expected to be grateful for the scraps. It had been easier to ignore when I was younger. I had told myself I was overreacting, reading too much into things. But after I had children, it became undeniable. Jessica's kids got extravagant gifts, surprise visits, their grandparents cheering in the front row at school events. My kids? A rushed birthday card in the mail. Excuses about how busy they were. And now this. You're seriously telling me that my kids aren't welcome, but Jessica's are? Oh, Rachel, don't be dramatic, Mom had sighed, irritation creeping into her voice. It's just one dinner. I had swallowed back the anger rising in my throat.
No, Mom.
If my kids aren't welcome, then neither am I. A long silence had stretched between us before she finally exhaled sharply. Suit yourself. And then she hung up. I had stood there for a long time, staring at my phone, my heart pounding. In the next room, I could hear Ethan and Lily laughing as they built a pillow fort, completely unaware that their grandparents had just cast them aside like an inconvenience. I should have expected it.
I should have been used to it by now.
But it still hurt. When I told David, he had been furious. You don't owe them anything, Ratch, he had said, shaking his head. They've treated you like an afterthought your entire life. Why should your kids be any different? I had nodded, but deep down, I still felt the sting of rejection. No matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise, there was still a part of me that wanted to believe my parents would change. That they would see how much they were hurting me and my children, and finally do better. But that night, as I watched Ethan and Lily snuggled up on the couch, their faces illuminated by the glow of the TV, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for their love anymore. The next morning, just as I was making peace with my decision, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. Mom says you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic? Of course. She had already run to Jessica. My fingers hovered over the screen. I could already predict how this conversation would go. Jessica, the perfect daughter, defending them, making excuses, dismissing my feelings like she always did. Instead of engaging, I typed out a simple response. Mom uninvited my kids. But yours are still welcome. How is that not personal? The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped. Finally, she responded. They just want a quiet evening, Rachel. You know how your kids can be a lot. That was it. That was the moment something inside me broke. Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Jessica. I won't be there. And then I turned off my phone. For the first time in my life, I wasn't playing along. I wasn't begging. I wasn't trying to prove my worth. They had made their choice. Now I was making mine. But what I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. The next few weeks would reveal just how little my parents actually valued me, and before long, the betrayal would go far beyond Thanksgiving. Because I was about to uncover a truth that would change everything. A week passed, and I told myself I was done thinking about it. I refused to let my parents' rejection ruin my time with my family. Instead of sitting at their table, where my children weren't wanted, we made our own plans. Thanksgiving morning, David and I made pancakes with Ethan and Lily, their giggles filling the kitchen as they spilled flour on the floor. We played board games, watched movies, and had a dinner that, while simple, felt full of love. But just when I started to feel at peace, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen.
Mom.
I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. David gave me a look. She's not going to stop. I sighed and picked up. Hello. Mom didn't waste a second. Rachel, I need to ask you something. Her voice was sharp and patient. I closed my eyes. What? Did you cancel the credit card? For a second, I thought I had misheard. What? I repeated, my heart starting to pound. Your father's credit card, she said, as if I was stupid. It was declined at the grocery store this morning. A cold wave of realization washed over me. I turned away from David, lowering my voice. You mean my credit card? Silence. Then a scoff. Oh, Rachel, don't be ridiculous. It's just a card. You make good money, and we figured. My stomach twisted. I had added them as authorized users on my credit card years ago when Dad had been recovering from surgery. It was supposed to be temporary, just until they got back on their feet. But they had never stopped using it. And I had never removed them. They had spent my money for years without ever asking. My voice came out cold. How much have you charged? Mom sighed. Why are you acting like this? We're your parents. We took care of you. How much, Mom? Oh, I don't know. Maybe 20,000?
22?
It's not a big deal, Rachel. I felt sick. $22,000. For groceries? Gas?
No.
They had used my card for years, without once thinking they needed to tell me. I had been so busy with my own life, raising my children, balancing work and home, that I hadn't noticed the money leaving my account little by little.
They had counted on that.
I clenched my jaw. I canceled it. You're not getting another dime from me. Mom let out a dramatic sigh. Rachel, don't be unreasonable. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. It's only fair you give back. My grip on the phone tightened. Fair? Fair would have been asking me, Mom, not stealing from me. She made a disgusted noise. You always overreact. This is exactly why it's so hard to talk to you. That was it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice dangerously calm. This conversation is over. And I hung up. David had been watching me the whole time. He stepped closer. Ratch. I took a shaky breath. They stole from me, David. They used my card for years.
His jaw tightened.
How much? I whispered. 22,000. He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. Unbelievable. I sat down, my head in my hands. I had spent my whole life bending for them, trying to be enough, trying to prove I deserved their love. And all I was to them was a source of money. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I knew cutting them off financially wasn't the end of this. They wouldn't let it go. And I was right. 3 days later, I got an envelope in the mail. A formal-looking one, with my parents' return address. I opened it, my stomach sinking. Inside was a legal document. I scanned the words, my eyes blurring as I read. They were demanding reimbursement for raising me. I let out a hollow laugh. They had even itemized costs, things like food, clothes, medical expenses from when I was a child. And at the bottom, a final sum, $65,000. David grabbed the letter from me, reading it with wide eyes. You've got to be kidding me. I let out a shaky breath. They want me to pay them back for being their daughter. He threw the paper onto the table. They've lost their minds. And I agreed. The next morning, I drove to their house. I didn't call first. I wasn't going to give them the chance to come up with more excuses. Mom opened the door, surprised to see me. Rachel. I held up the letter. What the hell is this? She folded her arms. It's what's fair. We gave you everything. The least you can do is give back. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, you mean like how I gave back by covering your expenses for years? Without even knowing? Dad appeared behind her, his expression smug. We sacrificed a lot for you, Rachel. And now you're abandoning us. I stared at them, shaking my head.
No, Dad.
You abandoned me the moment you made it clear Jessica was the only child who mattered. When you stole from me and then had the audacity to demand even more. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. If you don't want to pay, we'll involve lawyers. I met her gaze, unfazed. Go ahead. Let's see how well suing your own daughter works out for you. She blinked. What? I crossed my arms. You want to tell a judge you're demanding $65,000 for raising me while stealing from me behind my back? Be my guest. I've got bank statements, texts, and years of proof. Silence. For the first time, they looked uncertain. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to do the right thing. I let out another humorless laugh. Oh, I am. Right now. And then, without breaking eye contact, I ripped the letter in half. Mom gasped. You ungrateful little. I turned on my heel, calling over my shoulder. Merry Christmas. I got in my car and drove away. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. They weren't done yet. I thought that after tearing up their ridiculous demand for money, my parents would finally back off. Maybe, just maybe, they would sit in the wreckage of their own arrogance and realize that they had pushed me too far. But people like them? They don't change. They escalate. At first, there was silence. No calls, no texts, nothing. It was almost unsettling, like the calm before a storm. I figured they were hoping I would cave, that I would come crawling back, begging for forgiveness like I had always done in the past. But they underestimated just how done I was. Then, 2 days before Christmas, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Rachel, this is ridiculous. We're family. You don't turn your back on family over a silly argument." I stared at the screen, shaking my head. They still didn't get it. I ignored it. The next day, another message. "We forgive you. Come to Christmas dinner, and we'll forget this ever happened." I almost laughed. They forgive me? They had lied to me, stolen from me, manipulated me, and now they were the ones handing out forgiveness? Then, a few hours later, Jessica chimed in. "Mom and Dad are really hurting Rachel. Just apologize so we can move on." I rolled my eyes. Of course, in Jessica's world, I was the one who had done something wrong. She had always played that role, Mom and Dad's loyal soldier, always ready to enforce their rules, always ready to make sure I knew my place. I typed out a response. Funny. They weren't hurting when they were stealing from me. Or when they told me my kids weren't welcome at Thanksgiving. I think they'll survive. I hit send and blocked her number. I was done. Then Christmas Eve arrived. David and I had just finished putting the final touches on the tree. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine. Soft Christmas music played in the background, and Ethan and Lily were running around in their pajamas, too excited to sleep. Their little faces glowed with happiness, their laughter filling every corner of the house. It was perfect. Peaceful. Exactly what I had wanted. And then the doorbell rang. David looked up from the couch, his brows furrowing. No way. I already knew. I walked to the door, my stomach tightening as I peered through the peephole.
Mom.
Dad. And they were holding a gift. I sighed, debating whether to ignore them. But I knew them. If I didn't open the door, they would keep ringing the bell, making a scene. So, I pulled the door open. What do you want? Mom's face lit up with fake cheerfulness. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Dad held out the present in his usual authoritative way, as if he expected me to take it without question. For the kids. I didn't move to take it. Instead, I folded my arms. No thanks. Mom's smile flickered, her eyes darting to Dad. Rachel, don't be stubborn. Let's not ruin Christmas over this. I let out a sharp, humorless breath. Oh, you mean like how you ruined Thanksgiving? When you told me my children weren't good enough for your table? Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. Dad sighed, shifting his weight. Come on, Rachel. Let's just be a family again. I stared at them. I knew what this was. It wasn't about Christmas, and it certainly wasn't about my kids. They didn't miss me. They missed my money. You don't want to be a family, I said quietly. You want me to go back to being useful. Their silence told me everything. I shook my head. Take your gift and go. Mom's expression hardened. Rachel, don't be selfish. Think about the children. I let out a cold laugh. I am thinking about the children. That's exactly why you're not in their lives anymore. Dad's jaw tightened, his face darkening. You really want to do this? I exhaled, my voice calm and unwavering. I already did. And with that, I shut the door in their faces. I stood there for a moment, my hand still on the doorknob, waiting for the familiar wave of guilt to hit me. But it never came. Instead, I felt relief. Behind me, Ethan and Lily were still giggling, completely oblivious to what had just happened. And that was a good thing. I turned back to them, forcing a smile. Who's ready for hot cocoa? Their little faces lit up, and just like that, the moment was gone. That night, we had the best Christmas ever. Ethan and Lily tore into their presents, their laughter echoing through the house. We drank hot cocoa, played board games, and watched Christmas movies until they fell asleep curled up on the couch. David pulled a blanket over them and glanced at me. You okay? I nodded.
Yeah.
I really am. Because for the first time in my life, Christmas wasn't about proving myself. It wasn't about earning love. It was about us. Real family. The kind that doesn't come with conditions. The kind that loves you for who you are, not for what you can give. I thought that was the end of it. But I should have known better. Because on New Year's Eve, they did something I never saw coming. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start. A night to leave the past behind and step into a better future. That's what I told myself as I set up the snack table, laughter and music filling our home. Ethan and Lily were buzzing with excitement, running around in their little party hats, counting down the hours until midnight. David poured champagne for us, a soft smile on his face. It was our night, our celebration. A new year, one where I no longer had to tiptoe around my parents' expectations. And then the knock came. I froze, my stomach twisting. David looked at me from across the room, brow furrowed. You think? I already know. I walked to the door, taking a deep breath before opening it. There they were.
Mom, Dad,
Jessica, and Jessica's husband, Mark. An ambush. I crossed my arms. What do you want? Mom gave me a practiced, sympathetic smile. We just want to talk. I didn't move. No thanks. Dad sighed like I was the exhausting one. Rachel, enough. You've made your point. Now, let's fix this before things go too far. A chill ran down my spine. Too far? Mom exchanged a look with Jessica before turning back to me, her voice sickeningly sweet. We just don't want this to affect the kids. Something about her tone made my skin crawl. What are you talking about? Jessica stepped forward, arms crossed like she was the one who had been wronged. Mom and Dad have been talking to a lawyer. I stiffened. A lawyer? Mom nodded, her eyes gleaming with false concern. We're just worried, Rachel. You've cut your children off from their real family over a silly misunderstanding. That's not fair to them. I felt the blood rush in my ears. What are you trying to say? Dad cleared his throat, shifting his weight. We've been looking into grandparents' rights. For a moment, all I could hear was the ringing in my ears. Then I laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was loud, sharp, and completely unhinged. Jessica's face twisted. What's so funny? I wiped at my eyes, still grinning. Oh, you're serious. You actually think you can force your way back into my children's lives? Mom's lips pressed together in a thin line. We've done nothing wrong. I stepped forward, my voice ice cold. Nothing wrong, I repeated. You stole from me. You treated my kids like second-class citizens. And now, because I finally cut you off, you think you can bully your way back in? Dad's face darkened. You don't want to do this, Rachel. I smirked, pulling out my phone and holding it up. I want you to think real carefully about what you're about to do. Because I've got every text, every voicemail, every demand for money. And I promise you, if you try this, I will bury you. Jessica's husband, Mark, who had been silent this whole time, finally spoke up. Maybe we should. Shut up, Mark. Jessica snapped. I turned my attention back to my parents. You have no case, I said evenly. You know it. I know it. And if you keep pushing me, I will make sure everyone you know sees exactly who you really are. A beat of silence. Then Mom's face twisted in anger. You're being unreasonable. I smiled.
No, Mom.
I'm finally being smart. I stepped back into my house, keeping my eyes locked on theirs. Happy New Year. And then I slammed the door in their faces. They never went through with their pathetic legal threat. They knew they had nothing. They knew they had lost. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from them. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. And for the first time in my life, it felt like freedom. The weight of their expectations?
Gone.
The pressure to please them?
Gone.
The endless cycle of guilt and manipulation?
Gone.
Months later, on a warm spring afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, watching Ethan and Lily chase bubbles in the yard. David handed me a lemonade and sat beside me. It's been quiet. I nodded, watching our kids giggle as they popped the bubbles.
Yeah.
Feels good.
He smirked.
Think they'll ever try again? I took a sip of my drink, letting the sun warm my face. Doesn't matter. Because I had already won. I had my kids, my real family, and I would never let anyone make them feel unwanted again. I paid for my sister's luxury beach birthday party. 2 days before, she uninvited me, saying I was just the ATM, not family. I canceled everything, silenced my phone, and waited. 32 missed calls later, I answered and said just 3 words.
She cried.
Mom begged. I laughed, because what I did next, they never saw it coming. My name is Lena, and if you met me now, you'd probably think I have it all together. I'm 29, living in Denver, working as a software engineer, and honestly, life looks good from the outside. I've got a great apartment, good income, a few close friends, and peace. But it took a long, messy road to get here, and if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I never would have believed I'd make it this far. I've learned that peace sometimes means walking away from the people you once called family. It all started when I was 16. My mom died suddenly. One day, she was there, making breakfast, humming to old love songs, and the next she was gone.
Just like that.
I don't think my dad ever recovered. I didn't either, not right away. Everything in the house felt too quiet, too cold. Dad, Frank, tried to keep things going, but you could see it in his eyes. He wasn't really there anymore. Less than a year later, he brought someone new into our lives. Her name was Melissa. She had this polished smile, salon-perfect hair, and a sugary voice that made my skin itch even then. She walked into our kitchen like she owned the place. And by her side was this bright-eyed little girl named Aubrey, 6 years old, bouncing around in sparkly shoes and a butterfly backpack. Dad told me they were getting married. I didn't know what to say. I was still trying to understand why my mom wasn't coming back, and now I had to adjust to this new woman playing house in her place. But I tried. Really, I did. Aubrey was sweet at first. She followed me around, asked me to help her with puzzles, snuck into my room to show off her drawings. For a little while, I actually liked having her around. It felt like maybe I was gaining a little sister, and I remember thinking, okay, maybe this won't be so bad. But Melissa, she never saw me as part of her family. From the beginning, she'd ignore me in the hallway, barely said good morning, and her attitude only got colder. I'd walk into a room, and she'd suddenly start whispering to Dad like I wasn't supposed to hear. Over time, I started noticing changes in Aubrey too. She stopped visiting my room, stopped asking me to play. She barely looked at me. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd done something wrong. But one day, I overheard Melissa talking to her in the kitchen. "She's not really your sister, sweetheart," Melissa said in that fake sweet tone of hers. "She's just your dad's daughter. You don't need to spend so much time with her." I remember standing there, frozen, like I'd just stepped into some cruel version of reality. Everything made sense after that. The distance, the silence, the cold stares. Melissa had been quietly erasing me from the family, and she was using a 6-year-old to do it. So I gave up trying. I stopped knocking on Aubrey's door, stopped sitting at the dinner table hoping for a warm glance or a kind word. It was like I disappeared in my own home, and no one even noticed. Instead, I focused on my studies. I buried myself in books and coding and college applications. That was my way out. When I got accepted into a great university on a full scholarship, I didn't even tell them right away. I just packed and left. And once I was gone, the distance only grew. We barely spoke. No calls, no real connection. Maybe a birthday text here and there from Dad, but that was it. Deep down, I always believed Melissa had something to do with that. Every time Dad tried to reach out, she probably had a reason for him not to. Years passed. I built my life from the ground up. Finished college, got into a great tech company in Denver, climbed the ladder. With each promotion, I felt a little stronger. I had my own space, my own money, and most of all, my own peace. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang one morning. I almost didn't answer. It was Dad. "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" His voice was soft, almost unsure. We hadn't spoken properly in years. I was caught off guard. "I'm good," I said cautiously. "How are you?" "I've been thinking," he continued. "Maybe it's time we reconnect. Start fresh. Come by for dinner this Sunday? Melissa would love to see you too." That last part made my stomach twist. Melissa would love to see me? That didn't sound right. But still, I was curious. So that Sunday, I drove to their house for the first time in years. Melissa greeted me at the door with a wide smile and a hug like we were old friends. "Lena, we've missed you," she said. I stood there stiffly, trying to figure out what game she was playing. This was the same woman who once made me miss a family dinner by forgetting to tell me the time had changed. Inside, everything felt strange. Familiar walls, unfamiliar warmth. Aubrey, now a teenager, barely looked up from her phone when I walked in. We sat around the living room, making small talk about weather and traffic and things that didn't matter. Then, over the next few weeks, the real reason for the sudden invitation started to show. First, it was a casual mention of how expensive groceries had become. Then, the next week, Melissa brought up a plumbing issue. A week later, it was a broken heater. "Lena, we hate to ask, but could you help us out a little?" Dad said one night, eyes on his coffee cup. "Just until we get things back on track." I wanted to believe it was genuine. I wanted to believe they cared. So I said yes. $200 here, $500 there. Then $1,800. It added up fast. But I kept giving. Because some part of me still craved their approval. Still hoped for a connection. Then came Aubrey's 19th birthday. Melissa called me, full of excitement. "We're planning a beach party. Big celebration. She's growing up so fast. It would mean the world if you could help with the cost." I agreed, thinking maybe this could be my chance to rebuild something with Aubrey. I even started planning a surprise, covering her first-year college tuition. $6,000. It wasn't pocket change, but I could manage it. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the moment that brought us closer. But I had no idea what was really coming. 2 days before the beach party, my phone rang. I was just finishing up a call with a caterer, finalizing the menu. Grilled seafood, sliders, pasta trays, a chocolate fountain, and this gorgeous 3-tier cake with coral and seashell decorations. I'd picked everything with care, hoping it would make Aubrey's day special. I even imagined the look on her face when I'd surprise her with the news that her first year of college would be fully paid. Then I saw her name flashing on my screen. Aubrey. It was strange. She never called. We barely spoke during my Sunday visits. Most of the time, she sat in the corner scrolling on her phone, barely muttering a hey. So, a call from her? I answered, thinking maybe this was it. Maybe she wanted to say thank you, or just talk. But her voice was cold, almost rehearsed. "Hey Lena," she said flatly. "So, about the party." I waited. My heart was already doing this weird sinking thing. We're actually making some changes. Cutting down the guest list. Just keeping it close, real family and friends. I blinked. "Okay, what does that mean?" She didn't even hesitate. "It means we're not including you. No hard feelings or anything. Just trying to keep it tight." No hard feelings? I sat there, stunned. This girl, whose party I had fully funded, was uninviting me because I wasn't real family? I wanted to believe it was some kind of joke, that maybe she'd call back laughing and say she was kidding. But that call never came. I stared at my screen after she hung up. My hands were shaking. I didn't cry. Not at first. I just sat in silence, hearing those words echo in my head. "We're not including you. Real family and friends." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I replayed every moment over the past few months. Every dollar I'd handed over. Every dinner where I was met with silence. Every fake smile from Melissa. Every quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd changed. I was done. The next morning, I called the catering company. "Hi, this is Lena Mitchell. I need to change the delivery address for Saturday's order." The woman on the phone paused. "The full beach party order?" "Yes," I said. "Same time, same order. Just a new address." I gave her the name and location of a downtown homeless shelter I'd volunteered at during college, Hope Street Housing. They'd just added a women's wing last year. I remembered thinking they probably didn't get fancy meals often. "Wow," the woman said quietly after I explained. "That's really kind of you." I didn't tell her the whole story. I didn't need to. After I hung up, I put my phone on silent and went about my day. I blocked Melissa's number. I blocked Aubrey's. I even muted texts from Dad. 32 missed calls. Eventually, I answered one. It was Dad. Lena, where's the food? The guests are arriving soon. I said just 3 words. Ask your daughter. And I hung up. I wish I could describe the feeling that followed. It wasn't just satisfaction, it was clarity. Years of being used, of chasing love that never came, of shrinking myself to keep the peace, and finally, I had taken that peace back. That night, I opened a bottle of wine and watched a movie by myself, smiling the whole time. The reports came in the next day, mostly from my friend Serena, whose cousin happened to be at the beach party. She called me laughing so hard, she had to pause twice to breathe. Girl, it was chaos. Melissa ran to some deli to buy sandwich platters and chips. Half the guests left early. Aubrey was screaming and crying. She actually threw a gift bag into the ocean. People were whispering, wondering what happened. And your dad? He came back with a tray of grocery store cupcakes. I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. I had spent thousands trying to be accepted by a family who never wanted me. And when I finally said no, they fell apart. A few days later, my dad called again. His voice was quiet, controlled. Lena, what you did hurt your sister. I almost laughed. My sister? She's young. She made a mistake. I waited for the part where he'd say sorry, where he'd acknowledge what they'd done. But it never came. We still need to talk about her college tuition, he continued. And there it was. The real reason for the call. No, Dad, I said calmly. There's nothing to talk about. She's counting on you. Well, she shouldn't. He tried guilt. He tried anger. But I stayed firm. Finally, I said, you told me I wasn't family. So now I'm acting like it. That was the last time we spoke. Weeks passed, and then I heard from Serena again. You're not going to believe this, she said. Turns out your dad and Melissa used their savings to lease a luxury SUV, like right before the party. They thought you'd handle the college stuff, so they spent the money. I just shook my head. Of course they did. Now, apparently, Aubrey is refusing to get a job. She won't move out. She's protesting, literally. Says she won't speak to them until they fix the situation. Fix the situation? They created it. All of it. And for once, I wasn't part of the mess. Instead, I was planning my first solo trip to Hawaii. I signed up for a painting class. I started walking to work instead of driving just to enjoy the quiet. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to be included. Because I finally realized being used isn't love. And choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It happened a couple of peaceful weeks since the beach party fiasco. I thought the silence meant they had finally gotten the message that I was done being their doormat. I was wrong. One morning, I opened the door to get my mail, and there they were. Melissa and Aubrey standing outside my apartment building like it was totally normal. Melissa had her finger halfway to the doorbell, and Aubrey was wearing sunglasses like she was trying to hide her face. I didn't even say a word. I closed the door right in their faces. I don't know what they were expecting. A warm hug? An apology session where I just gave in again? After everything, they still thought I owed them something. That I'd crack if they just showed up. They came back the next day too. And the next. Sometimes both of them, sometimes just Melissa. I started using the back exit and told the building manager not to let them in. Then, about a week later, Aubrey sent me a text. We need to talk. I know I overreacted about the party. The guest list thing was just a joke. Can we just forget it and move on? I stared at the message for a long time. A joke? Now it was a joke. She uninvited me from the party I paid for, called me not family, and then expected me to forget it all like nothing happened? I almost didn't respond. But then something clicked. You're right, I texted back. It was a joke. And I thought it was hilarious. Especially the part where I sent all the food to a homeless shelter. Wasn't that funny? No reply. But the silence told me everything. She didn't know. Of course she didn't. Melissa and Frank had never told her. They didn't tell her I was planning to pay her tuition either. I was sure of it. If she had known, she would have played nice.
Pretended to be sweet.
She would have hugged me at the party and cried when I gave her the check, and I probably would have fallen for it. Again. In a weird way, I was grateful for her cruelty. It was real. It was honest. That one careless moment where she said I wasn't family, that had set me free. Of course, that wasn't the end of it. About 3 days later, I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. My Aunt Rachel, Cousin Ben, even some family friends from back in high school. Apparently, Frank and Melissa had been busy telling their version of the story to everyone who would listen. The tale they spun? Poor Aubrey, heartbroken on her birthday, left with no food because her cold-hearted sister pulled out last minute. Poor Frank and Melissa, trying to bring the family together while I just kept punishing them for the past. No mention of the thousands I had spent. No word about the uninvitation. No talk about the SUV they blew their savings on. I started getting voicemails full of guilt trips. Family has to stick together. She's just a kid, Lena. Don't let money ruin your relationships. One message even said, how could you let her future suffer like this? Don't be so selfish. Selfish. That word again. I'd been called selfish every time I said no. Every time I asked for space. Every time I stopped handing over my time, energy, and money with no thanks in return. At first, I tried to explain. I told one cousin everything. The party, the money, the tuition, the guest list. But she didn't believe me. Said it didn't sound like Aubrey. That's when I realized something important. They weren't really calling for me.
They were calling about me.
I was the villain in their version, and they needed me to fix the ending. Not one person asked how I felt. Not one asked what had happened from my side. So I turned off my phone. For 3 days straight, no calls, no messages, no notifications. Just silence.
And peace.
That weekend, I went to a small art fair downtown. I bought a canvas, some brushes, and a set of acrylic paints. I hadn't painted in years, not since high school. I set up a little corner by the window in my apartment and started brushing color across the blank space, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe. It wasn't about art. It was about me. Doing something because I wanted to, not because someone expected it. Not because I was being guilted into it. 2 days later, another knock at my door. This time, it was just Melissa. She was holding an envelope. I didn't open the door all the way, just cracked enough to hear her. We just want to talk, she said. Aubrey's really hurting. I stared at her. Then, maybe she should have thought about that before she called me an outsider. Melissa frowned. She's a teenager. She's 19, I said. Old enough to know better. She made a mistake. We all make mistakes. I let out a dry laugh. You didn't make a mistake, Melissa. You made a plan. And I finally stopped playing along. She held out the envelope. Just read it. Please. I didn't take it. I shut the door. I tossed the envelope in the trash without even opening it. Maybe it was a letter, maybe it was a guilt trip in written form, maybe even an invoice. I didn't care. I was done.
Completely.
They could twist the story however they wanted. They could knock and call and spread lies.
But they no longer had access to me.
Because for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And I wasn't looking back. A few months passed after that final knock on my door. I didn't hear from any of them again. Not Melissa, not Aubrey, not even my dad. At first, the silence felt heavy, like something was missing. But the longer it lasted, the lighter I felt. There were no more sudden texts asking for money, no more fake apologies followed by veiled requests. My life finally felt like my own. Then, one afternoon, my friend Serena called. She had news. You're not going to believe this, she said, already laughing before she got the words out. So, you know Aubrey? Of course I knew. I just waited for her to continue. She blew up at your dad and Melissa last week. Full-on meltdown. Screaming, crying, threatening to move out, the works. I raised an eyebrow. What happened now? They finally had to tell her that they used up their savings. Apparently, she thought they were going to pay for her college after all. I leaned back in my chair. Let me guess, they were counting on me again. Bingo. She found out they leased that new SUV right before the party, thinking you'd cover the tuition. When they told her, she lost it. Said they lied to her. Said they ruined her future. Part of me should have felt sad for her, I guess. But I didn't. This was the same girl who had called me an outsider and uninvited me from her party. The same girl who didn't even say thank you when I handed over money for the heater, the groceries, or the dozens of other things they couldn't manage. Now she was just facing what I had faced for years, manipulation dressed up as family love. She's refusing to work, Serena continued. Won't get a job, won't apply for loans, says she's protesting until they figure out how to fix it. Neighbors say she's locked herself in her room, comes out just to fight with them. It's apparently a full-blown war over there. I almost felt sorry for Frank, for my dad. But then I remembered the phone call after the party, the way he brushed past everything and immediately brought up tuition like I was some kind of walking scholarship. He didn't defend me when Aubrey hurt me. He didn't apologize for Melissa's years of coldness. All he ever wanted was what I could give, not who I was. They created this, I said quietly into the phone. This is what happens when you raise someone to believe they don't need to earn anything. Serena sighed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, but you're right. After that, I didn't think about them much anymore. Occasionally, someone would mention them in passing, an old neighbor, a distant cousin, but I never asked for details. I didn't need to know. Their drama was no longer mine to solve. Instead, I focused on things that made me feel alive again. I took long walks around the city. I joined a small painting group that met every Thursday at this cozy little studio downtown. I signed up for yoga classes, not because I wanted to get in shape, but because I liked the quiet, the calm, the feeling of breathing in peace and breathing out all the noise. And then I booked my trip to Hawaii. It wasn't anything fancy. Just me, a beachside Airbnb, a couple of paperbacks, and no plans. I didn't post pictures. I didn't share updates. It was mine, just mine. And it felt like freedom. Sitting on that beach, listening to the waves crash, I thought back to the girl I used to be. The one who waited for text messages that never came. The one who kept writing checks hoping to be loved. The one who believed that if she just gave a little more, tried a little harder, maybe she'd finally be accepted. That girl deserved better. And now she had it. I came home from that trip with a tan, a full heart, and zero regrets. One last message did come through about a month later. From Aubrey. Somehow, I hadn't blocked her number on email. It said, I know things got messy. I just wish we could go back to how they used to be. I miss having a sister. I read it twice. And then I deleted it. Because here's the truth. We never had a real sisterhood. What we had was a lie Melissa built and later tore down. Aubrey was just a kid, yes, but at 19, you know what cruelty is. You know when you're choosing to hurt someone. She made her choice and I made mine. I no longer chase people who don't want me. I no longer offer love where there's only expectation. And I no longer believe that family is about blood. It's about how you're treated, how you're seen, how you're respected.
So no.
I didn't go back. I didn't reply. I didn't fall for it again. Because I learned something in all of this. Peace isn't something you're given. It's something you claim. And I finally claimed mine. I worked 12 to 14 hours a day, sacrificing everything to save my family from huge debts. When I fell sick and lost my jobs, they abandoned me, yet spent my hard-earned money on lavish vacations. No calls. No concern. Just betrayal. So, I sent them one text. 30 minutes later, their panic flooded my phone. I laughed, watching their world crumble, just like they did to me. I never thought my life would turn out this way. If someone had told me years ago that the people I loved the most would be the ones to betray me, I would have laughed in their face. But life has a cruel way of showing you the truth when you least expect it. My name is Mia Carter, and this is my story. For as long as I can remember, I've been the responsible one in my family. The one who held everything together. The one who always put others first. I grew up in New York City, in a small apartment with my parents, Richard and Linda Carter, and my younger brother, Adrian. My parents always doted on Adrian, their golden boy. He was charming, ambitious. At least, that's what everyone thought. I never minded. I loved my brother, and I wanted him to have the best in life. When I was 22, I became a nurse. It wasn't just a job, it was my passion. Helping people, taking care of them when they were at their weakest, gave me purpose. But the salary wasn't much, and I had student loans to pay off. Still, I never hesitated when my parents told me we were struggling. They said we were in debt. Bills were piling up, the rent was overdue, and Adrian's education was expensive. My parents never asked Adrian to contribute. They said he needed to focus on his future. So, I stepped up. I worked long hours, double shifts, sometimes even 70 hours a week just to make sure my family had what they needed. Every paycheck I earned, I handed over to my mother. She promised me it was going towards the rent, the groceries, and helping Adrian build his future. I believed her. I never questioned it. Adrian was the star of the family. At 24, he was supposed to be building his own business, creating something great. I was proud of him. Whenever he spoke about his dreams, his plans to start different ventures, I listened with admiration. He always seemed busy, always talking about big deals and important people. I was happy for him. But there were little things that never quite made sense. Sometimes, I'd overhear him talking on the phone, laughing about parties, spending money like it was nothing. He always had the latest gadgets, wore designer clothes, went on trips with his friends. I asked myself, if we're struggling, where is he getting all this money? I brushed it off. Maybe he had investors, maybe his business was taking off. I didn't want to doubt him. After all, I was just a nurse. I didn't understand business. Then one day, I lost my job. It was sudden. Budget cuts. I remember sitting in my supervisor's office, staring at the letter in my hands. My heart was pounding. My job wasn't just a paycheck, it was my identity, my security. And just like that, it was gone. I came home that night, exhausted, defeated. My mother was in the kitchen, cooking like nothing had changed. My father was watching TV. Adrian was out as usual. I sat down, staring at my hands, and finally, for the first time in years, I asked for help. "Mom," I said quietly, "I lost my job today." She turned, frowning. "Oh, Mia, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" I wasn't. "I don't know," I admitted. I need some time to figure things out. And I might need help with the bills for a while." Her expression changed. Just slightly. A flicker of something, hesitation? Guilt? I wasn't sure. "Well," she said, avoiding my eyes, "you know things are tight right now." I blinked. "Tight?" I echoed. "But I've been helping. I thought things were getting better." She sighed, turning back to the stove. "It's complicated, Mia." That was it. That was all she said. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. A terrible thought crept into my mind. What if they had been lying to me? I tried to shake it off, but the more I thought about it, the more the pieces didn't add up. If we were drowning in debt, why did Adrian have the newest phone? Why did he travel so much? Why did my parents never seem stressed about money, except when I asked? I decided I needed answers. The next day, while everyone was out, I went through the household bills. My hands trembled as I opened them. Paid in full. No overdue notices, no debts. The rent? Up to date. Utilities? No issues. I felt sick. I searched for bank statements. What I found made my stomach turn. Transactions, thousands of dollars spent on luxury items, vacations, clubs. Adrian's name was all over them. My hard-earned money was being wasted, and my parents had known all along. I stood there, clutching the papers, my vision blurring with anger. My family, the people I trusted the most, had betrayed me, and they thought I'd never find out. But they were wrong. I sat there, gripping the bank statements, my hands shaking with anger. The truth was right in front of me, but I still couldn't believe it. Years of sacrifice, of working endless shifts, of skipping meals to make sure my family had enough. And for what? So Adrian could throw away my money on parties and vacations? So my parents could cover for him while I lived in the dark? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear up every single piece of paper in my hands, but I didn't. I just sat there, feeling my world collapse around me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for them to come home. I heard the door open around midnight, Adrian's laughter filling the apartment. He was probably drunk. My mother greeted him like he was a king returning home, her voice soft and warm. I could hear my father grumbling about something, probably asking him about his latest business. I got up, walked to the living room, and stood there. They all turned to look at me. My mother smiled, but it faded when she saw my expression. "What's wrong, Mia?" she asked. I held up the bank statements. "You tell me." The room went silent. Adrian glanced at the papers in my hand, then smirked. He actually smirked, like none of this mattered. "Where did you find those?" my father asked, his voice tense. I looked, I said, my voice shaking. "Because I lost my job, and when I asked for help, you acted like we had nothing. But guess what? We have plenty. Or, at least Adrian does." I turned to him. "You've been using my money, haven't you?" Adrian shrugged, like I had just accused him of borrowing a pair of socks. "Relax, Mia. You make it sound worse than it is." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Worse than it is? I've been killing myself working while you—" I threw the papers at him. "Have been living off me like a damn parasite." "Watch your tone," my father snapped. "My tone? After everything, that's what he cared about?" "You knew," I whispered, my voice raw. I turned to my mother, the person I trusted the most. "You let this happen. You let me believe we were struggling." She sighed like this was just an inconvenience. "Mia, you don't understand." "Then make me understand," I shouted.
Why?
"Why did you lie to me?" My mother hesitated, then said, "Adrian needed help. He was building something important. He just needed time." "Time?" I laughed bitterly. "Time for what? To waste my money? To play businessman while I worked myself to death?" I pointed at Adrian. He wasn't building anything. He was partying, traveling, buying expensive junk. My father crossed his arms. "He's young. He deserves to enjoy life." I felt something in me snap. "And I don't." My voice was barely above a whisper. "I've spent my entire life giving. When was I supposed to enjoy anything?" No one answered. I looked at Adrian again. He wasn't even ashamed. He was scrolling through his phone like he couldn't care less. Like this whole conversation was boring him. Something inside me hardened.
"Fine," I said.
"You don't care? Then neither do I." I walked away, locking myself in my room. I didn't cry. I didn't break down. Instead, I planned. The next morning, I didn't go job hunting. I didn't do my usual routine of helping around the house.
No.
I sat down with my laptop and started gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I accessed Adrian's emails, his so-called business transactions. It was worse than I thought. Fake investments, stolen money, tax fraud. He wasn't just wasting money, he was committing crimes. And my parents? They were covering for him. My hands trembled as I compiled everything into a file. It took hours, but by the time I was done, I had enough proof to bury him. That night, I sat at the dinner table, calm, collected. They thought I had moved on. They thought I was done fighting. They were wrong. Adrian walked in late again, reeking of alcohol. My parents barely reacted. They were used to it. I cleared my throat. "Adrian." He looked up, raising an eyebrow. "What now?" I slid my phone across the table. He picked it up and froze. I saw the color drain from his face as he scrolled through the files I had gathered. Bank records. Fraudulent transactions. Evidence of stolen money. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. I leaned forward, my voice steady. "It's your future. Or, more accurately, the end of it." His eyes snapped to mine. "Mia, you don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I do," I said. "I know exactly what I'm doing." My mother looked panicked. "Mia, please." "Don't." I cut her off. "Don't beg. You had your chance to make this right. You all did." I stood up, grabbing my jacket. "Tomorrow, I go to the authorities." Adrian shot up from his seat. "You wouldn't dare." I stared at him, dead in the eyes. "Watch me." And then I walked out the door, leaving them sitting there in stunned silence. They had no idea what was coming next. The moment I walked out of that house, I knew there was no turning back. I had spent years breaking my back for a family that saw me as nothing more than a source of income, and now they were going to face the consequences of their betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing with everything I had uncovered. The fraud, the fake businesses, the money Adrian had stolen, not just from me, but from other people too. Investors, friends, even business associates who had trusted him. I had it all in my hands, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The next morning, I went straight to the authorities. I sat across from an officer in a small, cold room, my hands gripping a flash drive that contained every dirty secret Adrian had tried to hide. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I told them everything, how I had been lied to, how my money had been stolen, how my brother had used fraudulent businesses to scam people out of thousands. The officer listened carefully, occasionally taking notes. When I was finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. "This is serious, Miss Carter. If everything here checks out, your brother is looking at major legal trouble." "I know," I said simply. He studied me for a moment. "And you're sure about this? This will ruin him." I met his gaze without hesitation. "He ruined me first. They took the evidence, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything fell apart for my family. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted them to know exactly what was coming." I went back home that evening, my heart pounding as I stepped through the door. My mother and father were sitting in the living room, whispering. The moment they saw me, they stopped. My father stood up. "Where have you been?" I dropped my bag onto the table. "You'll find out soon enough." Adrian walked in from his room, rubbing his eyes like he had just woken up. "Oh, look who's back," he said with a smirk. But when he saw my expression, the smirk disappeared. "What did you do?" I crossed my arms. "I went to the police." Silence. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. My father's face turned red. Adrian took a step forward, his eyes darkening. "Tell me you're joking." "I'm not," I said. "They have everything now. The fake companies, the stolen money, the fraud." I tilted my head. "You should probably start thinking about what you'll say in court." Adrian lunged at me so fast, I barely had time to react. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "You just ruined everything," he hissed. "Get your hands off me," I said, my voice calm but firm. My mother rushed forward, pulling him back. "Adrian, stop," she cried. He let go, his face twisted in rage. "You just signed my death sentence, Mia." "No," I said. "You did that to yourself." My father sat down, his hands covering his face. "You just had to ruin the family, didn't you?" he muttered. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ruin the family?" I repeated. "What family? The one that used me? The one that watched me suffer while Adrian lived like a king? That family?" My mother started crying. "Mia, we were just trying to help him." "No," I cut her off. "You weren't trying to help him. You were enabling him. You knew exactly what he was doing, and you let it happen. You let me suffer for his mistakes. And now, you're going to suffer the consequences." Adrian grabbed his phone and started pacing. "I can fix this," he muttered. "I just need time." "You don't have time," I said. "The police are already looking into you. Your accounts? They're frozen. The fake businesses? Under investigation." I took a step forward, staring him in the eye. "You have nothing left." His hands tightened into fists, his breath coming fast and shallow. I saw the panic in his eyes. He had always been confident, always smug, but now, for the first time, he was afraid. "Good." My mother sobbed into her hands. My father just sat there, silent, like he had already given up. I took a deep breath and picked up my bag. "I'm done," I said. "I'm done with this family, with all of you." My mother looked up, tears streaking her face. "Mia, please." I shook my head.
"No."
"You made your choice years ago, and I'm making mine now." Adrian's breathing grew erratic. He clenched his jaw. "You think you're better than us?" he spat. "You think the world owes you something because you played the victim?" I held his gaze.
"No."
"But I don't owe you anything anymore." A muscle in his jaw twitched. "You'll regret this," he growled. I didn't even flinch. "We'll see." And then I walked out, leaving them behind. The moment the door closed behind me, I felt free. The weight I had been carrying for years had finally lifted. I didn't belong to them anymore. They could no longer control me. I knew what would happen next. The investigation would dig deeper. Adrian's empire of lies would crumble. My parents, who had once stood by his side, would have nothing left. I should have felt guilty. Maybe a part of me did, deep down. But I pushed that thought away. Because in the end, they had done this to themselves. I didn't look back when I left that house. I didn't need to. I already knew what I had done, and I knew exactly what was coming next. I had spent years being their puppet, and now, finally, I had cut the strings. They just hadn't realized yet that the fall was going to hurt them more than it ever hurt me. The next few days were a blur. I moved into a small rented apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. No family breathing down my neck. No weight of guilt or obligation. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. No more working double shifts to support people who never cared about me. No more waiting for their approval. I was free. And then the phone calls started. First, it was my mother. "Mia, please," she sobbed into the phone. "You have to fix this." The police. I hung up. Then my father tried. "I hope you're happy," he said, his voice cold. "You destroyed your own family." I didn't reply. Adrian didn't call. He knew there was nothing he could say that would change my mind. But I knew he wasn't sitting back quietly. He was trying to find a way out. He always did. He had spent his entire life talking his way out of trouble, using my parents as his shield, letting them clean up his mess. But not this time. A week later, the news broke. Adrian Carter, arrested for financial fraud. The headline was everywhere. His name, his face, his shame, plastered across news articles and social media. His businesses were officially declared fraudulent, and the people he had scammed came forward one by one. Bank accounts? Frozen. Credit cards?
Shut down.
The life he had built on lies and stolen money collapsed overnight. The police had gathered more evidence than even I had imagined. Adrian had not only been stealing money but also forging documents, fabricating investments, and even committing tax fraud. The authorities had been watching him long before I came forward. My report? It was the final push they needed. And my parents? They weren't arrested, but they weren't innocent either. The authorities questioned them for days, digging into their involvement. How much did they know? How long had they covered for him? They weren't charged, but they lost everything in the process. Their home?
Gone.
The bank seized their assets due to unpaid debts linked to Adrian. Their reputation? Ruined. Their friends? Disappeared. No one wanted to be associated with them anymore. I watched it all unfold from a distance, without an ounce of guilt. One evening, weeks after Adrian's arrest, my mother showed up at my door. I knew she would. I opened it, but I didn't invite her in. She looked different. Older. Weaker. Like the weight of everything had finally settled on her shoulders. Her eyes were red, and for the first time in my life, she looked truly broken. "Mia," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." I didn't answer. I just stood there, staring at her. She took a shaky breath. "I know we made mistakes. I know we hurt you, but we're still your family." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I refused to let it show. "No," I said quietly. "You were my family. But the moment you chose Adrian over me, when you let me suffer, so he could thrive, you stopped being that." Tears slipped down her face. "We didn't mean to hurt you." I shook my head. "You did. You just didn't care until it backfired." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Please," she whispered. "I don't have anyone left." I took a deep breath, then said the words I had been holding in for years. "Neither did I." And then I closed the door. She didn't knock again. That was the last time I saw my mother. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I got a new job at a different hospital. I made new friends. Even started saving money for myself, something I had never been able to do before. It felt strange at first, not having to hand over every paycheck, not feeling guilty for spending on myself. I bought a new phone, not the cheapest one, not the most expensive one, just something that was mine, without a single trace of Adrian's influence. I bought clothes that I actually liked, instead of wearing the same worn-out scrubs and old jackets, because I was saving money for the family. I went to a restaurant alone for the first time in my life, sat by the window, and enjoyed a meal that I paid for without guilt. And one day, as I stood in my little apartment, looking around at the life I had built, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was finally living. For so long, I had waited for my family to see me, to value me, to love me the way I had loved them. But they never did. And maybe, just maybe, I was never meant to wait for their approval. Maybe I was always meant to walk away. My family had underestimated me for years. They thought I was weak. They thought I would always take care of them, always sacrifice myself for their happiness. But in the end, it wasn't me who fell apart. It was them. And I had never felt stronger. I gave up my dreams, worked 14-hour shifts, and sacrificed everything for my family. But they repaid me with betrayal, a $50,000 loan in my name, wasted on parties, while our daughter was used like an ATM. They had no idea what I had done. The next morning, their world shattered. I never planned for my life to turn out this way. If you had told me 10 years ago that I would spend most of my 20s buried under someone else's problems, I might have laughed in your face. But that's what happens when you grow up in a family that sees you as a provider rather than a daughter. I was just 18 when I started working at Westside Auto Repairs in Houston, Texas. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it, damn good. While other girls my age were heading off to college or figuring out their futures, I was underneath cars, covered in grease, fixing engines like a pro. My boss, Rick, saw my potential early on and took me under his wing. He always said, "Mia, you've got the hands of a surgeon and the brain of an engineer. Don't waste it." But I did waste it on my family. See, my parents, Jack and Linda, had never been great with money. My dad was a retired truck driver, but that didn't mean he had retired from making bad decisions. His gambling problem had been a shadow over our lives for as long as I could remember. Some weeks, he'd win big, and we'd eat steak for dinner. Other weeks, he'd lose it all, and we'd be scraping by with instant noodles. My mom, Linda, wasn't much better. She ran a small thrift store, but it never really made enough to support us. She was always struggling to pay rent, always behind on bills, always coming to me with those guilt-ridden eyes, asking for just a little help to get through the month. And I always gave in. Then there was Sophia, my younger sister. Sophia was the star, the princess, the golden child. She wanted to be a fashion influencer, and in our house, that dream was treated like it was more important than reality. While I was busting my ass at the repair shop, Sophia was posting pictures in designer clothes, sipping overpriced coffee, and pretending she had a luxurious lifestyle. A lifestyle, mind you, that I was unknowingly funding. At first, it wasn't so bad. I wanted to help. Family helps each other, right? That's what I told myself every time my mom asked for money to keep the store afloat, or when my dad promised that just a little loan would help him turn things around. It's what I believed when Sophia asked me for a new phone because a real influencer can't have a cracked screen, Mia. I thought I was doing the right thing. But the thing about always giving is that people stop seeing it as kindness. They start expecting it. And before I knew it, my paycheck wasn't mine anymore. Every time I tried to save up for myself, something would happen. The store was struggling again. My dad owed money to some guys he couldn't afford to piss off, or Sophia needed a new bag, a new camera, a trip to some influencer event where she could network. It became a cycle. I worked harder, they took more. I kept telling myself that one day it would get better, that if I could just help them one more time, things would stabilize. My dad would finally stop gambling, my mom would get the store running properly, and Sophia, well, maybe she'd actually make something of herself and start earning real money instead of just pretending to. But it never got better. The breaking point came in the form of a phone call from the bank. I remember that moment so clearly. It was a Wednesday, and I had just finished a full day at the shop. I was tired, sweaty, and looking forward to a quiet evening in my tiny bedroom at home. Then my phone rang. "Miss Carter, we're calling about the personal loan under your name." I frowned. "What loan?" The voice on the other end hesitated. The $50,000 loan that was taken out last year. The bank requires immediate payments, or legal action may be pursued. The world tilted. There's a mistake, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. I never took out a loan. But there was no mistake. My parents had taken out a $50,000 loan in my name, forging my signature. And they hadn't even bothered to tell me. I stormed home, shaking with anger. The second I walked through the door, I saw them sitting in the living room, Dad watching some old boxing match on TV, Mom sorting through a pile of thrift store clothes. Like everything was normal. Did you take out a loan in my name? My voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. They didn't even try to deny it. We needed the money, Mom said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You stole from me, I shot back. $50,000, Mom. That's not just a little favor. That's a crime. Dad waved a hand dismissively. Relax, Mia. We were going to pay it back. With what? My voice cracked. Your winnings at the casino? Silence. That's when I knew. They had no plan. No intention of ever paying it back. And the worst part? They didn't even feel bad about it. You work so much anyway, Mom said. You'll pay it off in no time. Like it was nothing. Like I owed it to them. I felt something inside me snap that day. Years of sacrifice, of being the responsible one, of carrying this family on my back, it all came crashing down. I looked at them, really looked at them, and I saw the truth. They didn't see me as their daughter. They saw me as their personal bank account. And I was done. I don't remember how long I stood there, staring at them. My parents. The people who were supposed to protect me, support me. Instead, they had robbed me blind, without a second thought. The anger inside me burned so hot I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something.
But what would that change?
They wouldn't suddenly feel guilty. They wouldn't magically become better people. No, they would just find a way to manipulate me into fixing their mess. That night, I packed a bag. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue or let them try to twist things around. I just walked out. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. I moved into a tiny apartment on the other side of Houston. It wasn't much, just a one-bedroom with thin walls and a kitchen the size of a closet. But it was mine. No one could take it from me. No one could guilt me into paying their bills instead of my own. Of course, they tried. The first few weeks were filled with phone calls, voicemails, guilt trips disguised as concern. Mia, we're struggling without you. Mia, how can you just abandon your family? Mia, you know your father's health isn't great. The stress is getting to him. I ignored them all. For once, I put myself first. I started saving again for me this time. Every dollar that used to disappear into my family's never-ending black hole of problems went straight into my bank account. My boss, Rick, noticed the change in me. You finally thinking about opening your own shop? He asked one day.
I had always talked about it.
My dream. A place where I could build custom cars, work on high-end restorations, be my own boss. But every time I got close, something pulled me back. Some new crisis, some new excuse to put my own future on hold. Not anymore. Yeah, I told him. I think I am. Things were finally starting to turn around. And then Sophia happened. It had been months since I had any real contact with my family, but I still kept up with things through social media.
It was impossible not to.
Sophia made sure everyone knew how amazing her life was. She wasn't just an influencer, she was a brand. At least, that's what she wanted people to believe. She posted pictures in designer outfits, luxury vacations, expensive brunches with Houston's elite. But I knew the truth. Every handbag, every five-star dinner, every first-class plane ticket, she wasn't paying for any of it. Some of it came from brand sponsorships, sure. But most of it was just another scam. She'd borrow money from family members, never paying them back. She'd sweet-talk her way into exclusive events, pretending she was more important than she was. She even rented luxury cars and took pictures in front of mansions that didn't belong to her. She lied for a living. And people ate it up. Then one day, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Sophia had posted a picture of our parents, smiling in their thrift store. The caption? So grateful for my amazing sister Mia, who always makes sure mom and dad are taken care of. Family first, always. And the comments flooded in. You're so lucky to have such a supportive sister. Mia sounds like the best sibling ever. Family is everything. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Family? Family? The same people who stole from me? The same sister who never worked a real job in her life? Now she was using my name to boost her image?
No.
I wasn't going to let this slide. I made a mistake that night. I called her. She picked up on the first ring, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Mia, it's been forever. How's my favorite big sister? Cut the crap, Sophia, I snapped. Why are you posting about me like I'm still paying for everything? A pause. Then a laugh. Oh, that? It's just social media, Mia. People love a good family story. Yeah? And what happens when they find out it's a lie? She sighed like I was being unreasonable. Mia, relax. It's not like it hurts you. If anything, it makes you look good. People love the hardworking, supportive older sister. It's good PR. I don't need PR, Sophia. I need you to stop using my name to make yourself look better. Silence. Then, in the same sugary tone, she said, I'd be careful if I were you. People like me, Mia. A lot of people. You're just some mechanic. No one cares what you have to say. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palm. Stay out of my life, Sophia. I hung up. I should have known that was only the beginning. A few months later, I saw it. Sophia was throwing a massive celebration party for hitting 500,000 followers. It was all over social media, local influencers, celebrities, investors. The kind of event that would take her career to the next level. But I wasn't invited. That part didn't surprise me. What did? She had erased me. Family photos on the wall. I wasn't in them. Old pictures from our childhood, cropped to make it look like I never existed. Even the few posts where she used to mention me, deleted. Like I was never part of her life. Like I didn't spend years sacrificing everything to support her. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't just angry. I was done. She wanted to erase me? Fine. But I had one final lesson to teach her. And this time, I wasn't going to play nice. The night of Sophia's big party, I sat in my apartment, scrolling through her endless posts. Everything about her was a performance. The glowing lights, the perfectly curated guest list, the designer dress she probably couldn't afford. It was all for show. And the worst part? People bought into it. They believed she was someone important, someone worth admiring. I wasn't angry that she didn't invite me. I wasn't even surprised that she had erased me. What burned was the lie. For years, I had been the one holding our family together, paying the bills, covering the debts, making sure my parents didn't end up on the streets. And yet, here she was, standing in front of hundreds of guests, acting like she built everything on her own. I had enough. I wasn't going to sit quietly while she thrived off my sacrifices. She wanted to be famous? Fine. I was about to give her exactly what she deserved. I spent the next 2 hours gathering everything I needed. Screenshots of unpaid invoices from brands she worked with, emails from people she had scammed into lending her money, receipts proving she rented luxury items just to take pictures with them. All of it. Then I found the biggest piece of evidence. An email from a major brand, one that Sophia had claimed to be partnered with, threatening legal action for falsifying a sponsorship deal. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just some petty influencer drama. She had built her empire on fraud. And I had the proof to bring it all down.
I didn't hesitate.
I sent everything to several fashion industry blogs, along with a simple message. You might want to double-check who you're doing business with. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Then again. And again. I opened Twitter. Sophia's name was everywhere. People were furious. Brands started pulling their partnerships, followers turned on her, and within minutes, her carefully curated image began to crumble. And then the call came. I almost didn't pick up, but something inside me wanted to hear it. Mia. Sophia's voice was high-pitched, panicked. What the hell did you do? I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. What do you mean? Don't play dumb, she snapped. You ruined me. I smirked.
No, Sophia.
You ruined yourself. I just made sure people saw the truth. There was a long silence. Then her voice dropped, filled with something I wasn't used to hearing from her, fear. Mia, you don't get it. This isn't just online hate. My sponsors are pulling out. My management won't answer my calls. This could destroy everything. Good. Good, she screeched. I'm your sister. I laughed, the sound bitter. You erased me, remember? According to you, I don't exist. That was different, she argued. I was just trying to make my brand look better. And I was just making sure the world knew exactly who you are. She cursed under her breath. Then, after a long pause, she tried again, her voice sickly sweet, the way it always was when she wanted something. Mia, please. We can fix this. Just tell everyone it was a mistake. Say you got confused or…
No.
Her breath hitched.
What?
No, Sophia. I'm not cleaning up your mess. Not this time. She started to say something else, but I hung up. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. I wasn't carrying them anymore. I was free. But it wasn't over yet. Because after Sophia, my parents came crawling back. It started with my mom. She showed up at my shop the next morning, acting like nothing had happened. I was under the hood of a 1969 Mustang, completely focused, when I heard the familiar sound of her voice. Mia, sweetheart. It's been so long. I wiped my hands on a rag and turned around slowly. There she was, standing in my garage, dressed in her usual second-hand clothes, but with the same calculating look in her eyes. What do you want, Mom? I asked flatly. She gasped, clutching her chest like I had just slapped her. Is that any way to greet your mother? I didn't answer. She sighed dramatically. Look, I know things have been tense between us, but this whole thing with Sophia, it's bad, Mia. Really bad. The poor girl is a mess. Not my problem. I turned back to the Mustang.
Mia.
Her voice was sharper now. Don't be cruel. She's your sister. Oh, now we're sisters? Funny, because last time I checked, I wasn't even invited to her party. You know how she is, Mom said dismissively. She gets carried away. But she needs your help now. We all do. And there it was. The real reason she was here. Let me guess, I said, crossing my arms. She lost her sponsorships. No more easy money. And now, she needs someone to clean up her mess. Again. My mom hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. Let me make something very clear, I said, my voice firm. I don't owe you anything. Not you, not Dad, and definitely not Sophia. You stole from me, used me, treated me like I was nothing more than a bank account. And now that everything's falling apart, you suddenly remember I exist? Mia, please. Get out. Her eyes widened. You don't mean that. I do. For the first time, my mother looked truly afraid, because she realized in that moment that she had pushed me too far. She opened her mouth to say something else, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned back to the car and got back to work. After a long moment, she finally got the message. She left. That night, my father tried calling. I let it go to voicemail. By the next morning, I blocked both of them. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. And I had never felt stronger. After I blocked their numbers, I waited for the guilt to creep in. For that familiar ache in my chest, the one that had always made me second-guess myself whenever I tried to set boundaries. But this time, it didn't come. Instead, I felt something new, peace. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waking up dreading another phone call, another demand, another emergency that wasn't mine to fix. The silence was strange at first, but I got used to it quickly. I threw myself into work, focusing on my own future instead of theirs. A few weeks passed, and Sophia's downfall was still making headlines in influencer circles. More brands came forward, exposing her fake partnerships and unpaid debts. Her accounts lost thousands of followers overnight, and her management team cut ties with her completely. She tried to do damage control, of course, posted a long, teary-eyed apology video about being young and making mistakes. But the internet isn't so forgiving when they realize they've been lied to. People saw through her act. No one bought it. And then one evening, she showed up at my shop. I heard the familiar sound of heels clicking against concrete before I even looked up. There she was, standing just outside the garage, looking nothing like the Sophia from Instagram. Gone was the designer clothing, the perfect hair, the expensive accessories. Instead, she looked tired. Like she hadn't slept in days. I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the car I had been working on. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice calm, controlled. She hesitated. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer, just gestured toward the bench outside the shop. She walked over, sitting down like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she let out a breath and said, "I lost everything, Mia." I didn't react. I just waited. My accounts are dead. My sponsors won't even return my emails. No one wants to work with me anymore. And Mom and Dad. She let out a bitter laugh. They're acting like this is all my fault. I raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it?" She flinched but nodded. "Yeah, I guess it is." Another long pause. "I thought they'd have my back," she admitted quietly. "I thought if things got bad, they'd help me. But the second the money dried up, they turned on me." I wasn't surprised. That's who they were. They'd use you until there was nothing left, then move on. The only reason they had stuck with Sophia for so long was because she was profitable, or at least she used to be. She stared down at the ground, picking at the hem of her shirt. "I don't know what to do, Mia." For the first time in years, she sounded like my little sister again. Not the influencer. Not the socialite. Just Sophia. And maybe once upon a time, that would have been enough. Maybe I would have given her another chance, helped her rebuild. But I knew better now. "That's not my problem," I said simply. She looked up, startled. "What?" "You heard me." I crossed my arms. "You want someone to clean up your mess? Go to Mom and Dad." "Oh wait, they need someone to take care of them now, don't they?" Her face crumpled. "Mia, please."
No.
I cut her off. "You made your choices. You burned every bridge. And now you want me to fix it? After everything?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I was stupid, okay? I thought I was better than you, better than everyone. I got caught up in it all. But I see it now. I get it." I let out a slow breath. "Sophia, I don't hate you. But I can't help you." She wiped at her eyes, nodding slowly. "I understand," she whispered. And, for the first time in her life, I think she actually did. She stood up, hesitating for just a second, like she wanted to say more. But in the end, she just turned and walked away. I didn't stop her. She never called again after that. Neither did my parents. In the months that followed, I poured everything into my shop. Business was booming. People trusted me, respected me. I was no longer Mia the provider, Mia the ATM, Mia the forgotten sister. I was just Mia.
And that was enough.
Doing 2 jobs to send $9,000 every month to my parents, while my sister wasted my money on her lifestyle. When I stopped the payments, my selfish father disowned me from the inheritance and left a $50,000 outstanding loan in my name. I took a bold step, and within months, they were begging. I laughed and walked away. I never thought my life would turn out this way. If you asked me years ago, I would have told you that family was everything, that no matter what, you stand by your parents and your siblings. But life has a way of teaching you hard lessons, lessons that shake you to your core. Growing up, I always felt like an outsider in my own family. My parents, especially my mother, made it clear that my older sister, Samantha, was their pride and joy. She was beautiful, charming, and had a way of making everyone adore her. I was just there. I wore her old clothes while she got brand new ones. If she wanted something, she got it. If I wanted something, I was told to stop being difficult. Even when she decided she wanted my bedroom, my parents didn't hesitate. They moved me into the hallway, brushing off my complaints like they meant nothing. Samantha needs her space, they said as if I didn't. At first, I thought maybe I just wasn't good enough. Maybe if I tried harder, they'd see me too. But no matter what I did, I was never enough. Samantha wanted acting classes? She got them. I wanted to join an after-school club. We don't have the money for that. Samantha wanted a new dress. My mom would take her shopping. I wanted something new. You already have clothes. But I swallowed it all, believing that one day, they would appreciate me. Years later, I got a job in software development. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked it. I worked hard, built my career, and moved into a small apartment in Chicago. It was the first time I had something of my own, a place where I wasn't constantly reminded that I was less important. It felt like a fresh start. Then one day, Samantha called me. She had always been the type to reach out when she needed something, and this time was no different. She told me that we should start giving back to our parents, showing them how much we appreciated them. They took care of us our whole lives, Rachel, she said sweetly. It's time we return the favor. I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew what it was like growing up in that house. I wasn't the daughter they praised, the one they adored. But then Samantha mentioned an amount, $9,000 a month. I almost dropped my phone. Are you serious? I asked. I barely made $5,000 a month at my job. How was I supposed to come up with that kind of money? Samantha laughed lightly. Come on, Rachel, it's not that much. I'm sending them the same amount. You can take on some extra work if you really care. I didn't want to seem selfish. After all, they were still my parents. If Samantha could do it, so could I, right? So, I found a second job, a night shift at a warehouse. It wasn't easy. I was already exhausted from my full-time job, and now I was spending nights lifting heavy boxes, barely getting any sleep. But I told myself it was temporary. I was doing the right thing. Months went by, and I continued sending the money, sacrificing my own comfort so my parents could live well. But then, out of nowhere, my mother called me. She wasn't her usual sweet, guilt-tripping self. She was furious. Rachel, she snapped. Do you think we're a joke to you? I blinked in confusion. What are you talking about? The money, she shouted. Samantha is sending us $9,000 every month, and you're sending us what? $5? Are you trying to mock us? My heart nearly stopped. Mom, I send you $9,000 every month. The full amount. I've been working 2 jobs just to afford it.
She scoffed.
Don't lie, Rachel. Samantha has been sending the full amount and she told us you only send $5. How could you be so selfish? I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Samantha had lied. She had taken credit for my sacrifices while making me look like the bad daughter. Mom, there has to be a mistake. I tried to explain, but she wasn't listening. You've always been ungrateful, she continued. Always thinking about yourself. Samantha is the only one who truly cares about this family. The call ended, and I just sat there, stunned. I had given everything, my time, my health, my happiness, to make sure my parents were comfortable. And all it took was a few words from Samantha to turn them against me. I needed answers. I called Samantha, demanding an explanation. She didn't even sound surprised. Oh, that? It was just a little mix-up. Don't make a big deal out of it. A mix-up? I repeated, my voice shaking. Mom and Dad think I've only been sending them $5. Samantha sighed. Look, Rachel, you always overthink things. The important thing is that Mom and Dad are happy, right? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You let them think I was worthless, I snapped. You took credit for everything I've done. She didn't even try to deny it. They already think I'm the better daughter. What difference does it make? I felt like I couldn't breathe. All those nights working in the warehouse, all those hours of exhaustion. And for what? So Samantha could keep playing the perfect daughter while I was seen as nothing? I hung up, my hands shaking with anger. I needed to talk to someone who actually cared. That's when I called Olivia. When I told her everything, she was silent for a moment. Then she sighed. Rachel, do you realize what's happening here? They don't need your money. They've been living just fine. This is all about control. I didn't want to believe it. But Samantha said, "She's been using you," Olivia said firmly. "She gets to keep all her money, while you struggle just to meet their ridiculous demands. And your parents? They never needed $9,000 a month. They're just spending it on their own luxuries." It hit me like a brick wall. The designer clothes my mother always wore. The vacations. The way my father casually mentioned poker nights. They weren't struggling. They were using me. I felt sick. All this time, I had been working myself to the bone, thinking I was helping them, thinking I was doing the right thing. But I had just been a fool. I took a deep breath. "I'm done," I whispered. "What?" Olivia asked. "I'm done sending them money," I said, my voice stronger this time. "If Samantha wants to be their golden child, she can pay for them." For the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. My days of being the forgotten, used daughter were over. When I made the decision to stop sending money to my parents, I expected some kind of reaction. I thought maybe they'd call and try to guilt-trip me. Maybe they'd ask what was wrong. Maybe, just maybe, they'd realize they had treated me unfairly. But weeks passed, and all I got was silence. At first, the quiet was unsettling. I had spent years being weighed down by their demands, constantly stressing about how to make ends meet just so I could meet their ridiculous expectations. Now that I had finally freed myself, I wasn't sure what to do with all the extra space in my mind. But little by little, I started feeling lighter. I slept better. I no longer had to force myself to take extra shifts at the warehouse. For the first time in years, my paycheck was mine. Then, after 4 months of silence, my phone rang. I saw Samantha's name on the screen and sighed. I knew exactly why she was calling. I let it ring a few times before answering. "Hello." "Rachel," she said sharply, skipping the pleasantries. "Why haven't you been sending the money? Mom and Dad are freaking out. You can't just stop without telling anyone." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "I told you, Samantha. I've been struggling for years trying to send that money. It wasn't fair. I'm done." She scoffed. "Rachel, we all have responsibilities. You can't just back out because it's inconvenient." I clenched my jaw. "Oh, I have responsibilities? I was working 2 jobs just to send that money while you kept all of yours. You were making me pay for everything while you sat back and let Mom and Dad believe it was all you." Samantha sighed dramatically. "Look, it's not my fault they assumed I was the one helping them. But they're struggling now, Rachel. Mom's been really stressed and Dad, he's not doing well." I knew better than to fall for her guilt-tripping, but a small part of me still hesitated. "What do you mean?" She hesitated for a second before answering. "He's been really upset. Playing poker more often. He's just trying to cope, but it's hard. And Mom, she's been worried sick about everything." Poker. Of course. My father wasn't struggling, he was wasting money. "So let me get this straight," I said coldly. "Dad is losing money in poker and Mom is still spending on expensive brands. And somehow, that's my problem." "Rachel," Samantha said, her voice dripping with frustration. "You're being selfish." I let out a short laugh. "Selfish? You mean like how you let them believe I was worthless? How you let me take on all the financial burden while you acted like the perfect daughter? Why do you always have to make everything about you?" she snapped. "This is about Mom and Dad. They need us." I sighed, shaking my head even though she couldn't see me. "Then you help them." For the first time, she didn't have an immediate response. "You're their favorite, right?" I continued. "You always got everything you wanted growing up. They always defended you, made excuses for you, gave you everything on a silver platter. Well, now it's your turn, Samantha. Take care of them." She inhaled sharply. "Rachel, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly." I cut her off. "I was never good enough for them. No matter how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed, they always treated me like an afterthought. But the moment they need something, suddenly I matter?
No.
I'm done." "Rachel, don't do this." She tried again, but I had already made up my mind. "You wanted to be the golden child, Samantha," I said firmly. Now act like it. I hung up. I expected her to call back, but she didn't. Instead, 2 weeks later, I got an unexpected visit from my parents. I had just come home from work when I heard a knock on my door. My stomach twisted. I knew it was them before I even opened it. When I did, there they stood. My mother, her arms crossed tightly over her expensive designer coat, and my father, looking irritated as if my very presence annoyed him. "Rachel," my mother said in a clipped tone. "We need to talk." I didn't move.
About what?
My father stepped forward. "Don't play games with us," he said. "You owe us an explanation. We gave you everything." I actually laughed at that. Everything? You gave Samantha everything. I was just there to be compared to her. My mother rolled her eyes. "Rachel, stop being dramatic. It's time you start acting like part of this family again." "You mean start paying for this family again?" I corrected. "Because that's what this is really about." My father clenched his jaw. "You know, we've been very patient with you." "Patient?" I repeated in disbelief. "You made me feel like I was nothing. You dismissed me my entire life. And when I finally had enough, I became the bad guy. How convenient." My mother let out a heavy sigh, as if she was the one suffering. "Rachel, we don't have time for your attitude. We need the money." I crossed my arms. "Then get jobs." My father's face turned red. "Is that how you talk to your parents?" I met his glare without flinching. "I don't owe you anything. Not anymore." There was a moment of silence. And then my mother scoffed.
"Fine," she said.
"We don't need you. But just so you know, your grandfather left you an inheritance. We still have access to it. If you won't help us, we'll just use that money instead." My blood ran cold. My grandfather had been the only one in my family who ever treated me with kindness. He had set aside money just for me, telling me he wanted me to have a future, to be independent. And now they were threatening to take it? "You wouldn't," I said slowly. My mother smirked. "We will. And there's nothing you can do about it." Something inside me snapped. I took a step forward. "I want you to listen very carefully," I said, my voice calm but firm. "If you touch a single cent of my grandfather's money, I will fight you for it. Legally. Publicly. And I will win." They exchanged a look. I could tell they hadn't expected me to fight back. "You're ungrateful," my father muttered. "We should have never." I cut him off. "You should have never what? Had me? Treated me like dirt? Used me for money?" Funny, I was thinking the same thing. My mother pursed her lips. "Let's go," she said, turning on her heel. I watched as they walked away. They didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I closed the door, feeling a weight lift off my chest. I knew this wasn't over, that they would try something. But for the first time, I felt powerful. I was done being their pawn.
And now?
Now it was my turn to play the game. I thought after that confrontation, my parents would leave me alone. That maybe, for once, they'd accept that I wasn't going to be their puppet anymore. But I should have known better. People like them don't just walk away when they lose control. They find another way to manipulate, to twist things in their favor. And this time, they went too far. It started with little things. Samantha stopped calling. At first, I felt relief. No more demands. No more guilt trips. But then, the messages from extended family started coming in. My aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly texted me asking why I was abandoning my parents. A cousin messaged me on social media, saying he heard I was doing well for myself, but refusing to help my struggling family. The narrative was clear. My parents were playing the victims, telling everyone that their cruel, selfish daughter had turned her back on them when they needed her most. I ignored it at first, but the more people reached out, the angrier I became. Samantha had always been the golden child, but my parents were masters at manipulation. They knew how to spin a story, how to make themselves look innocent. And now, they were trying to paint me as the villain. Then, the final blow came. I was at work when I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Hello," I said cautiously. Rachel, a male voice asked. This is Jonathan from Sterling Finance. I'm calling about an outstanding debt in your name. My heart stopped. I don't have any debts. There was a pause before he continued. Ma'am, according to our records, a loan of $50,000 was taken out in your name 3 months ago. The payments haven't been made, and we've been trying to contact you. A sick feeling spread through my stomach. I never took out a loan. He hesitated. The documents have your name and signature. I gripped my phone tighter. Send me a copy. The moment I saw the email, I knew. The signature was sloppy, rushed, but it was close enough to pass. The loan had been approved using my information. My parents had taken out money in my name. I hung up and sat there, my hands shaking. They had stolen from me.
Lied.
And now, if I didn't do something, I would be the one responsible for the debt. I called Olivia immediately. As soon as she picked up, I blurted it out. They took out a loan in my name. She didn't even sound surprised. I had a feeling they'd try something. I was barely breathing. What do? This is fraud, right? Yes, she said firmly. And you need to act fast before they ruin your credit or take out more. The next hours were a blur. Olivia helped me file a fraud report, and I contacted the loan company, explaining the situation. I had to go through multiple security checks, proving that I hadn't authorized the loan. By the time I finished, my head was pounding, but I wasn't done.
Not yet.
I went straight to my parents' apartment. When my mother opened the door, she had the audacity to smile. Rachel, she said sweetly, we were just talking about you. I pushed past her, my anger boiling over. You stole my identity. My father, sitting in his usual chair, barely glanced up. Don't be dramatic. I threw the printed loan documents onto the table. This isn't dramatic. It's a crime. My mother sighed, shaking her head. Rachel, we were going to pay it back. I laughed bitterly. With what? Dad's poker winnings? Samantha's imaginary acting career? She frowned. You don't understand. We were struggling. Struggling? I snapped. You went on vacation last month. You have more designer bags than a department store. You weren't struggling. You were stealing. My father finally spoke. We raised you. We gave you everything. And now you can't even help us? I felt something inside me break. You didn't raise me.
You tolerated me. You used me.
And when I finally fought back, you tried to ruin me. My mother's eyes darkened. If you don't help us, Rachel, we'll have no choice but to. To what? I cut in. Guilt me? Ruin my reputation? Guess what? You already tried that. And it didn't work. I turned to leave, but my father's voice stopped me. If you walk out that door, don't come back. I turned back, meeting his cold stare. I walked out a long time ago. That was the last time I saw them. A week later, the fraud case was resolved, and my parents were held responsible for the debt. Their accounts were frozen, and their credit was destroyed. Samantha called once, crying, begging me to help them, but I didn't answer. Then I heard the news. My parents had filed for bankruptcy. They lost everything, the apartment, their savings. My father, the man who used to belittle me for working so much, was forced to take a minimum wage job at a warehouse. My mother, who spent her life obsessed with appearances, now had nothing. As for Samantha, her acting career had been dead for years, but she had tried to cling to the illusion of success. Now, without my money supporting her, reality caught up. She started working at a small bar, but her attitude didn't win her any favors. Customers complained, and she was fired within weeks. For a long time, I thought about what happened to them. I wondered if they regretted it, if they sat in their tiny apartment thinking about how they had pushed me away. But deep down, I knew the truth. People like them don't change. They don't learn. And I wasn't going to waste another second of my life waiting for them to. 5 years have passed since I last saw my parents. 5 years since I walked away and never looked back. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret it, if I ever miss them. The truth is, I don't. Not in the way people expect. I miss the idea of family, the way I used to wish things had been. But I don't miss the reality of what they were, manipulative, selfish, and willing to destroy me just to maintain their comfortable lives. After everything fell apart for them, I made a promise to myself. I would never let their shadows linger over my life again. And for the first time, I truly focused on myself. Without the weight of their financial demands, I was finally able to breathe. I moved into a better apartment, one that actually felt like home. I took time for myself, something I had never been able to afford before. I stopped worrying about working myself to exhaustion, just to prove I was worth something. Instead, I pushed forward in my career, taking courses in business administration and eventually landing a promotion as a project manager. The money I once drained into a bottomless pit of family expectations was now being used to build a future for myself. And then one day, something happened that reminded me just how far I had come. I was in San Diego, attending my best friend Olivia's wedding. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in gold and orange, and for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Olivia had been by my side through everything, the only real family I ever had. Watching her walk down the aisle, looking radiant and happy, made me realize something. I had never known what it was like to be loved without conditions. But now I was surrounded by people who cared for me, not because they needed something, but simply because they valued me. After the ceremony, I was standing near the reception area, sipping a glass of wine when Olivia approached me with a mischievous smile. "Rachel," she said, looping her arm through mine, "I have someone I want you to meet." I groaned playfully. "Olivia, are you trying to set me up at your own wedding?" She grinned. "Just trust me." That's when I met Daniel. He was tall, with a confident but easygoing presence. A real estate developer, successful in his own right, but what struck me most was how effortlessly comfortable he made me feel. We started talking, and before I knew it, the world around us faded. At some point during our conversation, he said, "Olivia told me a little about you. She said you're one of the strongest people she knows." I smiled, shaking my head. "I don't know about that." He studied me for a moment before saying, "No, I think she's right. You've been through a lot." I hesitated, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass. "Yeah," I admitted. "But I don't let it define me anymore." And for the first time, I realized I meant it. We ended up having dinner together a few nights later, and then another. Slowly, something new started growing in my life, something I had never allowed myself to have before. Not just romance, but a connection that wasn't built on obligation or guilt. I used to think that cutting ties with my family meant I was alone. But standing there, surrounded by friends who had stood by me, meeting someone who saw me for who I truly was, I realized something. I had never been less alone in my life. A few months after the wedding, I got a call from an unknown number. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "Rachel." The voice on the other end was weak, hesitant. "My mother." I didn't say anything. She sighed heavily. "Your father, he's sick." I waited, expecting some kind of emotional response. But there was nothing. Just emptiness. "He's in a bad place," she continued. "And Samantha, she's struggling. She's had a hard time finding work." There it was. The real reason for the call. They weren't reaching out because they had changed. They weren't calling because they wanted to mend things.
They wanted something.
They always did. I let out a slow breath. "I hope you figured out," I said simply. She paused, clearly not expecting that. "Rachel, don't you care?" I considered the question. Once, I would have. Once, I would have rushed to their side, dropped everything to fix their problems just for a sliver of their approval. But that girl was gone. "No," I said, my voice steady. "I don't." I hung up, and just like that, the last chain they had over me broke. As I stood there, phone still in hand, I thought about who I used to be. The girl who bent over backwards for a family that never truly loved her. The girl who gave and gave until she had nothing left. And then, I thought about who I was now, a woman who had rebuilt her life on her own terms, who had found happiness not through approval, but through self-worth. I smiled to myself, finally free. And for the first time, I truly felt alive. When I was just 15, my family left me alone at a crowded airport and flew to another state on purpose. They said it was to teach me a lesson. I had nothing but a small bag, $100, and a heartbreaking in real time. I cried until I couldn't breathe. Then, with shaking hands, I made one call to my uncle. What happened next? Let's just say when my parents landed, their celebration turned into their worst nightmare. And that was only the beginning. I'm Nora Bennett, and this is the story I never thought I'd tell out loud. But sometimes silence becomes too heavy to carry, and the past refuses to stay buried. So here it is, my truth, plain and raw. It started when I was 15. That age where you think you're starting to understand the world, but really, you're just beginning to see its sharp edges. We were at the Phoenix airport, just another supposed family trip. My mom, Renee, was fussing over my younger brother, Ethan, who was 13 at the time, while my dad, Greg, stood off to the side, checking his watch like he couldn't wait to get this over with. I remember dragging my little suitcase behind me, my headphones on, trying to drown out their usual bickering. Ethan looked nervous, like he knew something I didn't. I didn't see it coming. Not the way it happened. We were near the gate when Mom suddenly handed me a folded $20 bill and said, "Go grab us some snacks, sweetie. You've got time." She smiled, the way she always did when she wanted something. Not warmth, just performance. I took the money and went. I should have known better. There was something strange in the air, some kind of tension. But I told myself I was overthinking, that they wouldn't do what my gut was whispering. I came back maybe 10 minutes later, juggling chips, sodas, and a pretzel. But the seats where we'd been sitting were empty.
Gone.
No sign of them. I scanned the area, then ran to the gate, my heart pounding. The flight was boarding. I didn't see them in line. I didn't see them anywhere. I must have stood there like a statue, holding those snacks, staring around as the crowd moved past me. I tried calling my mom's phone, then my dad's. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. Still nothing. I didn't cry right away. I think I was too numb. I sat down near the window and stared at the runway, waiting for them to come back. Waiting for this to be a mistake. But deep down I knew. This wasn't a mistake. An hour passed. Then 2. That's when the tears came. And not the quiet kind. I was sitting by baggage claim, hugging my knees, crying so hard people started giving me those awkward looks, the kind people give when they don't know if they should help or stay away. Eventually, I pulled out my phone again. I had exactly $100 in my pocket. That's all I had to my name. Just me and a suitcase. And one number left to call. Uncle Ray. He was my dad's older brother. They hadn't spoken in years. Some fight I was never told the full story about. But I remembered him from when I was little. He'd always smiled at me like he meant it. Always treated me like a person, not a burden. I didn't even know if the number still worked, but I called anyway. He picked up on the second ring. Nora? His voice was scratchy, like he hadn't used it in hours. My own voice cracked when I spoke. Uncle Ray, they left me. I'm at the airport. I don't know what to do. There was a pause, then a sharp inhale. What airport? Where are you? Phoenix, Sky Harbor. I'll be there, he said without hesitation. Just sit tight. I'm coming. He drove 6 hours through the night from Flagstaff to get me. When he finally arrived, I was slumped against the wall by a vending machine, red-eyed and hollow. He wrapped me in a hug so tight I felt something break and heal all at once. Ray took me home that night. And just like that, he became my real family. Not by blood, but by choice. My parents didn't call. Not that night. Not the next. Not for weeks. When they finally did, weeks later, it was an email. A short one. Cold. Hope you figured things out. Life is tough. You need to learn how to survive on your own. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Nothing about Ethan, or what they told him. Just a blank wall of silence wrapped in cruelty. I spent the next few years clawing my way through high school. Ray didn't have much. He worked long days at his auto shop, but he gave me something I'd never really had before. Safety. A quiet place to sleep. Warm meals. Someone who asked how my day was and actually cared. I worked evenings after school, diners, grocery stores, anywhere that would take a 16-year-old. I saved every dime. I stopped hoping they'd come back for me. I stopped waiting. College was a fight. Scholarships, loans, part-time jobs. I studied journalism like it was oxygen. I wanted to tell stories. Real ones. Stories people didn't want to say out loud. Maybe because no one had told mine. By 24, I was a junior reporter for a Denver magazine. By 30, I was editor-in-chief. I built a life from ashes. Brick by brick. My own apartment. My own company car. My own name on the door. Nora Bennett. Not Greg's daughter. Not Renee's mistake. Just me. Things were quiet for a long time. I didn't talk about the past. I didn't think I needed to. But pain has a funny way of circling back when you least expect it. It was a Thursday when the first voicemail came. I was sipping coffee at my desk, halfway through editing a cover story. The number was unfamiliar. I almost let it go. Then another one. Then 3. I played 1. Nora, it's Ethan. My heart skipped. I know it's been a long time. I didn't know what they did to you, not really. But we need help. Can you call me back? His voice was older, of course. But the way he said we, that word made something cold crawl up my spine. I didn't call back. Not right away. Instead, I sat there in my glass-walled office, the Denver skyline glowing behind me, holding my phone like it might burn me. Because after all these years, the past wasn't just knocking. It was breaking down the door. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, phone clutched in my hand like it held some kind of answer. Ethan's voice kept looping in my head, that soft, unsure tone.
We need help. We.
Not just him. I knew exactly who he meant. Greg and Renee. My parents. The people who walked away from me without blinking. By morning, I'd listened to every voicemail. There were 6 in total, each one more desperate than the last. The final one said, "Please, Nora, just meet me. One time. I'll explain everything. I just want to talk." So I said yes. Not for them. For him. Because the boy I remembered, the one who used to sneak me candy when our parents weren't looking, who used to sit next to me when things got loud at home, he didn't deserve to be ignored. Even if I wasn't sure I could look him in the eye. We met at a small cafe off Colfax Avenue. It was still dark outside, not quite 6 in the morning. I got there early. My nerves were a mess, but I hid it behind a coffee cup. When Ethan walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older than 30, tired, like someone who had carried too much for too long. But he smiled when he saw me. A hesitant, broken smile. "Hey," he said softly. I nodded. "Hey." He slid into the booth across from me, eyes searching mine like he was still trying to figure out who I'd become. "You look good. Different. Grown." "I am," I said, keeping my tone neutral. He gave a quiet laugh, but it didn't last long. "I wasn't sure you'd come." I wasn't sure either. A long pause stretched between us. Then he cleared his throat. "Things are bad," he said. "Dad lost most of their savings gambling. Mom's credit cards are maxed out. The house is in foreclosure. They're drowning." I didn't say anything. I just stared at him, waiting. "They've changed," he added quickly. "They're not the same people." "They left me at an airport, Ethan," I said, my voice calm but sharp, "with $100, and they didn't come back." He flinched, looking down. "I didn't know."
I swear.
I thought we were just going on a trip. "They told me you'd meet us later. That you were mad and needed time alone." I swallowed hard. That lie, after all this time, still had the power to cut. He looked up at me, eyes wide and pleading. "Please, Nora. They're not well. They need help. And they miss you. They really do." I set my cup down slowly. "They don't miss me. They miss what I can give them." He blinked. "That's not fair." "No," I said, my voice steady. "What's not fair is a 15-year-old girl sitting at a gate waiting for her parents, realizing they were never coming back." Ethan sat back, like the weight of it was finally settling on his shoulders. So, that's it? You won't even talk to them? I am talking.
To you.
I pulled a few bills from my wallet and dropped them on the table. I'm sorry, Ethan, but I'm not their second chance. I stood up and walked out before he could say anything else. My heart was pounding, my breath tight in my chest, but I didn't stop. Not until I got to my car and slammed the door shut. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd said what needed to be said. I chose myself. But they weren't done with me. 2 days later, Samantha, my assistant, knocked on my office door, her face pale and tight. Hey, she said carefully. You might want to see this. She handed me her phone. It was open to a Facebook post. Our daughter, Nora, abandoned us. After everything we gave her. After raising her and sacrificing so much. Now, when we're old and struggling, she turns her back on us like we're strangers. My blood ran cold. The post had hundreds of likes, dozens of comments. People I didn't know, strangers calling me selfish, heartless, greedy. Some even tagging my magazine's page. They're twisting everything, Samantha whispered. It's spreading. The next day, anonymous emails started hitting our inbox. Accusations that I stole from my parents. That I owed everything to them. That I built my career off money they gave me.
Clients were forwarding them.
Some asked for meetings. One even pulled out of a deal we'd been working on for months. It was sabotage. I had a team meeting that afternoon. My staff looked uncomfortable, confused. Samantha pulled me aside after. What do you want to do? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I spent the night rereading those emails, those comments. Each one chipped away at the walls I'd spent years building. But it wasn't until I traced the IP address from one of the anonymous emails, and it came back to an address tied to my parents, that something inside me snapped. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to destroy me. The next morning, I opened my laptop and wrote a post. Just a few paragraphs. Nothing fancy. Just the truth. When I was 15, my parents left me at an airport in Phoenix with $100 and no way home. They never came back. They told people it was a lesson in independence. I call it what it was, abandonment. I told the rest, too. About Uncle Ray. About building my life from scratch. About the silence, the lies, the years without a word, until they needed something. Then I hit post. The response was immediate. Messages flooded in. Some from strangers sharing similar stories. Some offering support. Others just saying, "We believe you." The tide began to turn. But the damage had already started. That week, my parents filed a lawsuit. I got the letter delivered to my office. A thick envelope stamped by a law firm. Greg and Renee Bennett versus Nora Bennett. They were suing me under a filial responsibility clause, demanding financial support. I stared at the paperwork for a long time. My reflection in the office window was calm, almost still. But inside, a storm had started. They were really doing it. They weren't just ghosts from my past anymore. They were coming for me in the present. And they weren't stopping. I wish I could say I was surprised when the lawsuit landed on my desk, but I wasn't. Somewhere deep down, I knew it was coming. My parents were never the kind of people to walk away quietly, especially when they thought they had something to gain. Still, reading my name printed on that legal document, Greg and Renee Bennett versus Nora Bennett, it hit me like a punch to the gut. Samantha found me standing at the window of my office, the letter still in my hand. "Do you want me to call Leo?" she asked gently. I nodded without turning around. Leo Chavez was my lawyer, sharp and steady, the kind of person who didn't flinch under pressure. He read through the lawsuit while I sat across from him, silent, waiting. When he finally looked up, he shook his head. "They're filing under a filial responsibility clause," he said. "Some states enforce it more than others. Colorado isn't strict about it, but if they make enough noise, it could drag out. Publicly, it's already messy." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. "So, what are you saying? They're trying to force me to pay for the life they ruined?" He gave a small, tight nod. "That's exactly what they're trying to do." We discussed strategy. He advised caution, careful language, avoiding escalation. But I was done playing small. "Let them come," I told him. I'm not backing down. In the days that followed, the smear campaign only got louder. Fake accounts on social media kept popping up, spreading stories that I was cold, heartless, that I left my aging parents to rot while I lived a life of luxury. Some of these posts tagged our business partners, advertisers, clients. It was deliberate, coordinated.
And it worked.
Some sponsors pulled out. One board member questioned my leadership. A few longtime readers canceled their subscriptions. People love drama, especially when it comes with just enough lies to sound like truth. But I refused to let them own the story. I called another team meeting. This time, I stood in front of the staff and told them everything. Not in detail, not with emotion, but with clarity. I told them about my childhood, about being left behind, about what was happening now, about the lawsuit and the harassment. They were quiet when I finished, but no one left. No one judged me. Some even came up after to offer their support. One of our junior writers, someone I barely knew, handed me a sticky note that just said, "You're not alone." That night, I posted again. Not just a paragraph this time, but a full statement.
Calm.
Factual.
Honest.
I built my life without them. Every job, every apartment, every sleepless night, I earned on my own. My success doesn't belong to anyone but me. I will not be shamed into silence. I will not fund the people who abandoned me. The post went viral within hours. People started pushing back against the narrative my parents had crafted. Comments rolled in, some from strangers, some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Survivors. Fighters. People who had walked away from toxic families and lived to tell the story. And then, just when I thought maybe it was finally starting to settle, they showed up. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing final edits for the next issue when Samantha buzzed through the intercom. Her voice was tense. "There's a couple here in the lobby. They say they're your parents." I didn't move. For a second, I just stared at the screen in front of me, not reading a single word. "They're making a scene," she added quietly. Of course they were. I stood slowly and walked out into the lobby. There they were. Renee, dressed like she was attending a funeral, complete with a handkerchief pressed to her cheek. Greg, arms folded, wearing that same old scowl that used to silence entire rooms. "Nora," Renee said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Please, honey, just talk to us." My stomach tightened. Greg stepped forward. "You think you're too good for us now, huh? You forget who raised you." I looked around the lobby. My staff was watching. Some were filming. I didn't care anymore. "You left me," I said clearly. "At 15. Alone. At an airport." Renee gasped a little too dramatically. "That's not fair. You needed to grow up." It was a tough love lesson. "No," I said, keeping my voice calm. "It was abandonment." Greg's face twisted. "We made you strong. Everything you have is because of us. You taught me what not to become." Security was already on their way. I gave them a nod. "Please escort these people out. You're going to regret this," Greg hissed as they were led away. Renee's voice was softer, but no less poisonous. Poor girl. So much success, but no heart. The doors closed behind them. I went back to my office and shut the door. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From fury. Because I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. They would keep pushing until I stopped them for good. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my office door. No return address. Inside was a single note, typed and signed. "You don't get to erase us." I read it once, then again, and then I smiled. Because they were right. I wasn't erasing them. I was rising without them. After they were escorted out of my office building, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally back off. But with people like my parents, backing off isn't in their nature. A few days passed without anything new, and I started to believe they'd run out of moves. Then the next blow came, not in person, not online, but through my business. One of our biggest investors forwarded me an email. It had screenshots, quotes pulled from nowhere, and accusations that I had a history of fraud, specifically financial misconduct involving my parents. The claim said I stole money from them, used their resources to build my career, and left them destitute. Anonymous sources. No facts. But the intent was clear. I could feel the heat rising at my neck as I read each word. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. This was an attack on everything I'd built. I called Leo. "They're playing dirty," I said.
He sighed.
"We can prove it's false. But if these claims reach the media, it could damage you more than the court case ever could. So what now? You fight back. Not just legally, but publicly." I hung up and stared at my reflection in the office window. Behind me, the city moved on like it always did. But inside me, everything slowed. My parents didn't want help. They wanted control. And when they couldn't get it with guilt or lies, they tried to burn down what I had built. So I gave them what they never expected.
The truth.
All of it. That night, I sat at my desk and wrote the most personal story I had ever shared. I didn't hold back. I told the world how I was left at 15 in a crowded airport, how I waited for them to come back, how they never did. I wrote about the $100 in my pocket, the 6-hour drive Uncle Ray made to get me, the years I spent working 2, sometimes 3 jobs while putting myself through school. I wrote about building my life with no handouts, no favors, just grit and survival. And I ended it simply. Family isn't defined by DNA. It's defined by love, loyalty, and who shows up. I chose myself, and I will continue to choose myself, no matter who tries to rewrite the past. I posted it just before midnight. By morning, it had gone viral. Messages poured in from all over the country, people thanking me for saying what they were too afraid to say themselves. Survivors of toxic families. People estranged from abusive parents. People who had walked away, and those who wanted to but didn't know how. The support was overwhelming. And for the first time in days, I breathed. The lawsuit dropped a week later. I didn't even have to countersue. Once they lost the public sympathy, they lost their power. Their lawyer backed off. Investors and clients returned. Some even praised me for handling the whole thing with grace and honesty. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. One evening, about a month after the storm had finally settled, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened it, there he was. Ethan. He looked even more tired than the last time I saw him. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his shoulders were slumped like the weight of all our history was pressing down on him. "Nora," he said, voice cracking. "Can I talk to you?" I didn't answer. I just stepped aside and let him in. He sat on the edge of the couch like he wasn't sure he belonged there. "They lost the house," he said quietly. "Dad's drinking again. Mom keeps blaming everyone but herself. Me included. I didn't say anything. They still think you owe them something." I looked at him carefully. "And what do you think?" He swallowed hard. "I think they broke something they can't fix. And I hate them for it. But I also hate how it's tearing everything apart." "I didn't break this," I said softly. "They did." "I know." His voice was barely a whisper. There was a long silence between us. Then, tears in his eyes, he said, "I just don't want to lose you too." I leaned forward, my voice firm but not unkind. "You didn't lose me, Ethan."
They did.
"And I'm not going back. I'm not stepping into that fire again just to make them feel better. I survived once. I won't crawl back just because they finally hit the bottom." He nodded, wiping his face. "I get it." I stood and walked him to the door. "Take care of yourself," I said. Truly. He left without asking for anything more. That was the first real sign he might be healing too. Later that night, I poured a glass of wine and sat out on my small balcony, the Denver lights flickering like tiny promises in the dark. The air was cool, peaceful, and for the first time in years, quiet. I opened my contacts and found Uncle Ray's name.
"Dinner this weekend?"
My treat. His reply came in seconds. "Finally. I've been waiting. Mexican or Italian?" I smiled. "Mexican. Extra margaritas." Then I went to my blocked contacts list and removed 2 numbers. Not to talk. Not to reconnect. Just so I could see them there and know that I had a choice. And I chose peace. Again. Always. My parents banned my disabled 8-year-old daughter from the family reunion, saying she didn't belong. But when I arrived, I saw my sister's 2 kids running around. They deserve to be here more than your daughter, they said.
So I made one call.
30 minutes later, the whole room was in chaos, and they were all on their knees, begging. I smiled, turned around, and walked away. I never thought my life would turn out like this. Sitting in my dimly lit apartment in Chicago, watching my 8-year-old daughter, Lily, sleep peacefully in her bed, I wonder how I ended up here, alone, exhausted, and betrayed by the very people who were supposed to love me the most. My name is Samantha, and I am 36 years old. A widow. A single mother. A woman who spent years trying to please a family that never truly saw me. My story isn't a happy one, but it's real. And if I've learned anything, it's that sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. It all started nearly 2 years ago, the day my husband, Ethan, died in a car accident. I remember the phone call vividly. It was early in the morning, just before I left for work. My phone rang, and when I saw an unknown number, I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. "Is this Mrs. Carter?" the voice on the other end asked. I gripped the phone tighter. "Yes, who is this?" There was a pause. Then, the words that shattered my world. "I'm calling from St. Joseph's Hospital. Your husband was involved in a severe car accident. I'm sorry, but he didn't make it." I don't remember much after that. Just the feeling of my legs giving out beneath me, my hands trembling, my heart racing. My world ended in that moment, and nothing has been the same since. The next few months were a blur. Funeral arrangements, paperwork, endless nights of crying. The only thing that kept me going was Lily. She had already been through so much, born with a condition that made movement difficult for her, requiring constant therapy. And now, she had lost her father. I couldn't fall apart. Not for myself, but for her. At first, I thought my parents would step in to support me. But I should have known better. They were too busy doting on my older sister, Olivia, and her 2 children. It had always been like that growing up. Olivia was their golden child, the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong. I was just there. "You'll be fine, Samantha. You've always been independent," my mother said dismissively a few days after Ethan's funeral. Fine? I had just lost my husband. My daughter had lost her father. And they expected me to carry on like nothing had happened? The only real support I had came from Margaret and Robert, Ethan's parents. They stepped in where my own family failed me. They picked up Lily from therapy when I had work, helped with groceries, and offered nothing but unconditional love. "You're not alone, sweetheart," Margaret told me one evening while she made dinner in my small kitchen. "We're here for you. Always." Her words warmed my heart, but they also highlighted a painful truth. Why did I feel more love from my in-laws than my own parents? Then came the money issue. After Ethan's death, I received a $200,000 insurance payout. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to secure Lily's future, pay for her medical treatments, and give us a little safety net. I wasn't reckless. I worked hard as a financial analyst, ensuring that every dollar was wisely spent. But my parents saw the money differently. To them, it wasn't about Lily's future. It was an opportunity. It started subtly. "You should help your family, Samantha," my mother hinted one evening over dinner at their house. "Olivia and Daniel are struggling. He's the only one working, and with 2 kids, well, it's hard." I knew where this was going. "I have my own child to worry about, Mom," I reminded her. "Lily's therapy costs are high. I need to think about her first." But they didn't care. Soon, it wasn't a suggestion anymore. It became an expectation. "We're family, Samantha, and family supports each other," my father said. "Olivia is sending us $1,000 every month. You should send $2,000. You can afford it." I froze. "Olivia is sending you $1,000? I asked, surprised. "Of course she is. She understands her responsibility," my mother replied with a proud smile. Something about it didn't feel right. Olivia had always been spoiled, always the one receiving, never giving. But I was too drained to argue. And deep down, a part of me still craved their approval. So, like a fool, I agreed. Every month, I sent $2,000 to my parents. I told myself it was for the best, that maybe, just maybe, this would make them see me differently. That maybe they would finally treat me as an equal to Olivia. I was wrong. Months passed and nothing changed. They still ignored Lily, still treated Olivia like a queen, still dismissed my struggles. But the final betrayal was yet to come. A week before our family reunion, my mother called me. "Samantha, darling, we're doing something different this year," she said sweetly. "We're having an adults-only gathering. You should come alone. It will be more sophisticated, just the grown-ups enjoying a nice evening." My heart dropped. "What about Lily?" I asked. A pause. "Oh, well, she can stay with Margaret and Robert. You know how fussy she can get at these things." I swallowed the lump in my throat. Lily wasn't fussy. She was bright, curious, and full of questions. But to them, she wasn't welcome. That night, I sat in Lily's room watching her sleep, my mind racing. I had done everything they wanted. I gave them money, sought their approval, played the role of the good daughter. And still, it wasn't enough. I told myself I would go to the reunion, be polite, and figure out what to do next. But nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover that night. And once I did, there would be no turning back. The night of the family reunion, I drove to my parents' house alone, my stomach twisting with unease. I had left Lily with Margaret and Robert, who, as always, had welcomed her with open arms. She was excited about spending the evening with them, baking cookies and watching Christmas movies. I told myself it was for the best. At least she would be with people who truly loved her. But deep inside, I felt sick. I tried to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, my parents had meant no harm. That maybe this adults-only event was exactly what they claimed it to be. I should have known better. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed the number of cars parked outside. More than usual. My parents' house was lit up, music and laughter spilling out into the cold air. I walked up to the door, took a deep breath, and stepped inside. And then my world tilted. Children. Everywhere. I saw my sister Olivia's 2 kids running around the living room, giggling and chasing each other. Other cousins' children were playing near the fireplace, wearing silly paper crowns and eating cookies. The entire house was filled with the sound of family and joy, except my daughter was nowhere to be seen. Because Lily was the only one not invited. I stood there frozen, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. My mother spotted me from the dining room, her face lighting up in a false, practiced smile. "Oh, Samantha, you're here. Come in, sweetheart." I didn't move. I couldn't. I just stared at her, at my father, at Olivia, at every single person who had lied to me. Then my Aunt Linda approached, her brow furrowed. "Where's Lily? She's not sick, is she?" I felt my fingers tighten around my coat. "She wasn't invited," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Aunt Linda blinked.
What?
"What do you mean?" I turned to face my mother. "That's what you told me, wasn't it? An adults-only party. No kids. So, why are Olivia's children here? Why are all of these children here?" The room fell into an eerie silence. Conversations died. All eyes turned toward my parents. Olivia fidgeted beside them, looking anywhere but at me. My mother sighed, setting down her wine glass as if I was being unreasonable. "Samantha, darling, you're making this into something bigger than it is. The other children, well, they know how to behave at formal gatherings." I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. "They know how to behave," I repeated. "So, what exactly are you saying? That Lily doesn't? That my daughter, who is nothing but polite and curious, doesn't belong here?" "Samantha, please, let's not make a scene," my father said, his tone sharp, warning. I shook my head, feeling something inside me crack. I had spent years biting my tongue, years swallowing the pain of being treated like I was never good enough. But this was the final betrayal. And then, as if fate wanted to put an end to their lies, chaos erupted. Olivia's youngest son grabbed a handful of deviled eggs and hurled them across the room, hitting his sister right in the chest. She shrieked. The other kids burst into laughter, running wild through the house, knocking over decorations. I turned to my mother, raising an eyebrow. Oh yes, I see now. Such well-mannered children. Her face paled. She knew she had no excuse left. But it wasn't over. Not yet. I took a deep breath and spoke loud enough for the entire room to hear. For months, I have been sending my parents $2,000 every single month because they told me that Olivia was contributing $1,000. I turned toward Olivia, whose face had gone ghost white. Isn't that right, Olivia? You've been helping them too, haven't you? She stammered, panicked. I meant to, but... You never sent them a single penny, did you? I cut her off. Gasps echoed through the room. Daniel, Olivia's husband, snapped his head toward her. Wait, what? What money? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I turned to my parents. So let me get this straight. You manipulated me into thinking Olivia was contributing, just so I would send you more money? More gasps. My mother looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her. My father clenched his jaw, his face red with embarrassment. Daniel stood up abruptly, his voice filled with anger. Olivia, tell me this isn't true. You've been lying about sending money? Olivia shook her head furiously. They told me to say it. Mom and Dad said if Samantha thought I was helping too, she'd be more willing to send money. That was it. That was the moment everything shattered. I looked at my parents, the people who had raised me, the people who should have protected me. And all I saw was greed and shame. The room exploded with outrage. Relatives started whispering. Some openly expressed their disgust. Aunt Linda folded her arms, glaring at my mother. So, you've been treating Samantha like a bank account while excluding her daughter? That's sick. Uncle Henry's wife shook her head. And all this time, we thought Olivia was the generous one. Turns out, Samantha was the only one doing anything for this family. One by one, people began gathering their coats, their purses, their children. I'm not staying in this house another second, Uncle Henry said, shaking his head. A few others muttered in agreement, throwing my parents looks of disgust before heading for the door. But I wasn't done yet. I turned back to my parents. From this moment on, I will no longer be sending you any money. And I will no longer be part of this family. My mother gasped. Samantha, don't be ridiculous. Ridiculous? You lied to me.
You manipulated me.
You excluded my daughter from her own family.
No.
I'm done. And with that, I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the cold night. I didn't look back. I didn't care if they called after me. All I knew was that for the first time in my life, I was free. But I also knew this wasn't over yet. They would try to fix this. They would try to pull me back in. And I was ready for whatever came next. I drove home that night with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The cold Chicago air seeped through the cracks of my car windows, but I barely noticed it. My heart was still racing from what had just happened. The betrayal, the lies, the way my own family had used me like an ATM while casting my 8-year-old disabled daughter, Lily, aside like she was nothing. I had finally cut them off. I had finally stood up for myself. But why did I still feel that ache in my chest? When I pulled up to Margaret and Robert's house, I took a deep breath before stepping inside. The moment I opened the door, I was greeted by the smell of freshly baked cookies and the warm sound of Lily's laughter. She was sitting at the kitchen table with Margaret, covered in flour, her small hands rolling out dough. Mommy, she squealed when she saw me. She reached for me, her bright eyes filled with joy. We made gingerbread cookies. Want to try one? I forced a smile, swallowing back the emotions threatening to break free. Of course, sweetheart. As I sat down, Robert handed me a cup of tea and gave me a knowing look. Rough night. I let out a long sigh, staring into my cup. Worse than I imagined. Margaret sat down across from me, gently wiping flour from Lily's cheek. Tell us everything.
So I did.
I told them about the lie my parents had spun about Olivia sending them money, about how they tricked me into paying them $2,000 a month, about how they deliberately excluded Lily from the reunion while letting every other child attend. By the time I finished, Margaret was shaking her head in disbelief, and Robert's jaw was clenched. "They've never deserved you, Samantha," Margaret said softly. "And they sure as hell don't deserve Lily." I nodded, but there was something else gnawing at me. "It's not just about the money," I admitted. "I spent my whole life trying to be enough for them. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. Olivia was always the favorite. I kept hoping that if I just did what they wanted, if I just worked harder, they'd finally see me. But they never did." Robert placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything to them anymore. You have a real family right here." I looked at Lily, happily munching on her cookie, unaware of the storm raging in my heart. He was right. Margaret and Robert had done more for me and Lily than my own parents ever had. But just as I was starting to feel some sense of peace, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. "She's already calling," I muttered. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Are you going to answer?" I exhaled and pressed decline. But she didn't stop. The texts started flooding in. First from my mother, then my father, then Olivia. Each one trying to justify their actions. "Mom, Samantha, let's be reasonable. You overreacted. We can talk about this. Dad, you humiliated us tonight. You embarrassed your family. That wasn't necessary. Olivia, you've always been so dramatic, Sam. You act like the victim when we're all struggling. Can't you just let it go?" I clenched my jaw and shut my phone off. "They don't get it," I whispered. Robert sighed. "They never will." For the first time in my life, I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I had expected my parents to keep calling, to keep trying to reel me back in. But suddenly, there was nothing. Then, exactly a week later, the silence broke. I was helping Lily with her math homework when the doorbell rang. I peered through the peephole and felt my stomach twist. Mom and Dad, standing on my porch, holding a large, beautifully wrapped package. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door, but I didn't step aside. I stayed firmly in the doorway, blocking their entrance. "Hello, Samantha," Mom said, her voice too sweet, too forced. "We wanted to talk." Dad held out the gift. "It's for Lily. We thought she'd like it." I didn't take it. Instead, I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" My mother let out a dramatic sigh. "We know we made mistakes, sweetheart. We didn't handle things well. But we're still family. We love you." I scoffed. "You love me? You love Lily? Funny, because a week ago, you didn't think she was good enough to be at your reunion." My father shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't like that, Samantha." I gave them a sharp look. "Then explain it to me." They exchanged glances, but neither of them had an answer. "You told me Olivia was sending you $1,000 a month," I continued, my voice steady but firm. "That was a lie. You manipulated me into sending you money while she gave you nothing. And even after everything I've done for you, you still treated Lily like she didn't matter." Mom's eyes welled up with tears, but I knew they weren't real. She had always been good at crying when it suited her. "Samantha, we were wrong.
We see that now.
But let's put the past behind us." I stared at her, then at Dad. "Are you sorry because you realize you hurt me? Or are you sorry because the whole family turned their backs on you?" Silence. I already knew the answer. I stepped back, gripping the edge of the door. "I don't believe you. And I don't trust you. Not anymore." Mom gasped. "Samantha, don't do this." But I was done. I shook my head.
No.
Family doesn't manipulate each other. Family doesn't treat one child like they're disposable while worshiping the other. What you did, that's not family. Dad looked away, defeated. Mom still stood there, looking desperate. "Please," she whispered. I closed the door. And this time I didn't feel guilty. As I turned around, I saw Lily standing in the hallway, watching me. "Are you okay, Mommy?" she asked softly. I smiled, pulling her into a hug. "I am now, baby." And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The days after my parents showed up at my door were quiet. Too quiet. The calls stopped. The messages stopped. It was like they had disappeared from my life overnight. I knew it wasn't because they had suddenly realized their mistakes or felt remorse for what they had done. No, it was because they had lost their power over me. They knew I wasn't going to cave this time. And without the control they once had, without my money, they had nothing left to say. I expected to feel empty, maybe even sad. But I didn't. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. Lily and I settled into a peaceful routine. I went to work, picked her up from school, helped her with therapy, and spent our evenings cooking dinner together or watching movies. Margaret and Robert continued to be our safe place, always there when we needed them. They never asked for anything in return, never made me feel like I had to earn their love. One Sunday afternoon, Aunt Linda called. "I just wanted to check in on you," she said. "See how you're holding up." "I'm okay," I told her honestly. "Better than I expected." She hesitated before speaking again. "You might want to hear what happened after you shut the door on your parents." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "What do you mean?" "After you left the reunion, it all fell apart," she said. "People were disgusted. They couldn't believe how your parents treated you, how they used you for money and excluded Lily. Uncle Henry, his wife, and even some of the cousins left immediately. It was like a switch flipped, and suddenly, everyone saw them for who they really were." I stayed quiet, absorbing her words. "But that's not the best part," Aunt Linda continued. "Daniel packed up the kids that night and took them to his parents' house. He was furious when he found out Olivia had been lying about sending money. I heard through the grapevine that he's staying there indefinitely, thinking about his marriage." I exhaled slowly. So Olivia's perfect life wasn't so perfect anymore. "Your parents have been trying to do damage control," she added, a hint of amusement in her voice. "Calling family members, trying to spin the story, but no one's buying it. Their golden reputation? It's gone." I closed my eyes, feeling a strange mix of relief and finality. It wasn't that I wanted revenge. It wasn't about making them suffer. I just wanted the truth to come out. I wanted people to finally see what I had lived through my entire life. When I hung up, I looked at Lily, who was sitting at the kitchen table, doodling on a piece of paper. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" I asked, walking over. She beamed up at me, holding up her picture. "Our family." I looked at the drawing. It was a simple sketch, me, Lily, Margaret, Robert, Aunt Linda, and Uncle Henry. All of us standing together, smiling. No mom, no dad, no Olivia. Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't from sadness. They were from realization. Lily had drawn the only people who had ever truly been there for us. I kneeled beside her and kissed the top of her head. "It's beautiful, baby." "Mommy," she asked, tilting her head, "are Grandma and Grandpa ever going to come back?" I didn't know how to explain it to an 8-year-old. That sometimes, family isn't who you're born to, but who you choose. That sometimes, people who are supposed to love you unconditionally will let you down. But I did know one thing. "We don't need them to, sweetheart," I said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "We have everything we need right here." She grinned and went back to coloring. And I watched her, feeling something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for my parents' approval. I wasn't hoping for their love. I wasn't waiting for them to change. I had my daughter. I had people who truly cared about us. And that was more than enough.
The end.